All right, everybody. Good evening and welcome to the Boise City Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. A few things to start out with for tonight's proceedings. Everyone from the public entering the hearing virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you will be called upon and unmuted. There is a chat function in Zoom. This is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. Our procedures for public hearings begins with a presentation from the planning team. Then we'll go to the applicant and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who are in person, then who signed up on the sign-up sheets in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand virtually. If you're attending through your telephone, you can type in *9 to raise your hand. Finally, each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited in code. And the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Mr. Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Crystal. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of Boise City Planning and Zoning Commission. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. We make final decisions on conditional use permits, variances and appeals, and recommendations to the city council on subdivisions, rezones, annexations, and plan or comprehensive code amendments. Any decision made tonight may be appealed to the city council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting. That's why it's important to give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize a consent agenda. This means that if the applicant agrees with the staff report and if there is no public opposition, their item will be placed on the consent agenda. All items placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing. We will begin by hearing from staff, then the applicant, and then questions from the commissioners. Public testimony begins after the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those on the sign-up sheet. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. After we're through the signups, we'll then do folks that are online who may wish to testify. The applicant is then allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will render a decision. Thank you all for attending tonight. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Stead.
Here.
Schaefer.
Here.
Squires. Blanchard.
Here.
Moore. Here. Gillespie. Finfrock.
Here.
Danley. Mooney.
Here.
7 present, 2 absent.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, we have a few, sorry, I'm getting a little feedback. Okay, we have a few items on our agenda tonight eligible for consent. So we'll start with those items first. First of those items is item number 1. This is PUD 23-14, Beacon Engineering and Surveying. The address is 1526 North Steelwood Avenue. This is a conditional use permit for a planned residential development comprised of 19 multifamily units on 0.58 acres in a C2D zone. Is the applicant present tonight?
Hi, this is April with Beacon Engineering. I'm representing the applicant.
Hi there, April. Are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report?
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. And is there anyone in attendance tonight hoping to testify in opposition to this item? And Crystal, I'm sorry, I don't see the online folks right now with how I'm, okay, great. Okay, great. It's like there's no opposition to that item. So we'll go ahead and place item number 1 on the consent agenda. And the one other item tonight eligible for consent is item number 5. This is PUD 23-8 Walsh Homes. This was deferred from our July 10th meeting of this year. The project address is 3712 North Patricia Lane. This is a modification to a conditional use permit for a planned residential development to add a multifamily unit on 0.65 acres in an R1C zone. And is the applicant present tonight? Great. Let the record show the applicant is present. And are you in agreement with the staff report? Yes. Let the record show the applicant is in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report. And is there anyone present this evening hoping to testify in opposition to this item? Okay. Crystal, you see anybody online? All right. Looks like we'll place item number 5 on consent. And I believe that will do it for our consent items tonight. At this point, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Mooney.
I recommend, or I move we place items 1 and 5, PUD 2314 and PUD 23.
Hey, come on, let's go up.
Second.
Okay, great. I have a motion. Just to be clear to John, you are motioning to approve the consent
Motion.
agenda.
Yes.
Great. All right. So I have a motion to approve, motion and a second to approve the consent agenda consisting of item number 1 and 5. Any further discussion? Okay. Will the clerk please call the roll then?
Stead,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Aye.
Finfrock,
Aye.
Mooney,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, very good. All right, items 1 and 5 have been approved on the consent agenda. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move back to the top of our agenda tonight and move on to item number 2. This is PUD 22-13 JGT Architecture. Project addresses are at 4819 West Morris Hill Street and 300 North Orchard Street. Excuse me. This is a conditional use permit for a planned residential development comprised of 78 multifamily units on 2.32 acres in a C2D zone and an R2 zone. General exception to apply the commercial zoning standards to the entire project is also included. We're going to hear from staff first. Jesse Lyle.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. The item before you is PUD 2313, a conditional use permit for a planned residential development comprised of 78 multifamily units located at 4819 Morris Hill Road and 300 Orchard Street on 2.32 acres in the C2D and R2 zones. A general exception to apply the commercial zoning standards to the entire project, as well as a height exception, are also included. The subject property is located along the Orchard Street commercial corridor with residential uses surrounding, and it is in a mixed-use land use designation. The applicant proposes to utilize the general exception to apply the C2D zoning designation to the entire project as allowed by the development code in order to allow for increased density and a reduced setback along Morris Hill Road. The planning team finds the proposed general exception appropriate as the subject property is located along an arterial street with public transit. Additionally, the majority of the project's density is oriented along Orchard Street away from the single-family neighborhood to the east. A condition of approval requires the applicant to record a parcel consolidation prior to the submittal of building permits. The applicant is also requesting a height exception from 45 to 47 feet to the parapet of the 4-story building adjacent to Orchard Street. All other buildings will meet the height requirements of the development code, and the townhome style building adjacent to the single family neighborhood will be a maximum of 32 feet to the parapet. The site is designed to place 3 largest apartment buildings around a courtyard with amenities adjacent to Orchard Street and to place 1 townhome style building along Morris Hill Road. The number 6 bus line runs along Orchard Street, and there is a bus stop at the corner of Morris Hill and Orchard, less than 100 feet from the subject property. Morris Hill Road is also designated as a level 1 bikeway. The applicant is proposing to have all vehicle access taken from Morris Hill Road, and ACHD has approved this proposal as outlined in the project report. There's a 10% parking reduction requested due to the proximity of transit, and the applicant is proposing to provide 104 parking spaces instead of the 105 spaces required for a development of this size. They're also including the required bike parking. The applicant is proposing detached sidewalks with a landscape buffer and street trees along both street frontages and must provide a schedule of all trees to be removed to conform with the proposed plantings will fully mitigate for the loss of existing trees on site. Public opposition was received concerning the initial site layout with concerns expressed about density, height, traffic, vehicle access, and design. However, the applicant has redesigned the site to concentrate most of the density and height along Orchard Street away from the adjacent single-family neighborhood and has 1 townhome style building along Morris Hill Road closer to that single-family neighborhood. Subsequent comments have been received with concerns about traffic and pedestrian infrastructure. ACHD has indicated that the existing roadway can accommodate the anticipated traffic, and the applicant will be required to provide detached sidewalks along both street frontages as well as enhanced pedestrian network internal to the site. As conditioned, the project meets the standards outlined in the development code and the goals of the comprehensive plan, and the planning team recommends approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. Next, we'll hear from the applicant. Yep, I think so.
My name is Kevin Amar. Address is 150
Pardon me, is the green light on the mic on the top?
Oh, there it is.
Okay,
We can hear
Sounds-
you, sorry.
that sounds better. Do I need to repeat address?
Yeah, please,
Um,
for the record.
Okay, start off. Good evening, Mr. President and Commissioners. My name is Kevin Amar. My address is 1580 West Cayuse Creek Drive in Meridian. And I'm here tonight representing 300 Orchard Apartments. It is a project that it sits, or we propose it on formerly the Stinker Station site, as well as the Stinker Station corporate offices. We have gone through the process of remediating any gas station residual uses, and it has been released by DEQ. That was oversaw by DEQ. So any of those issues are remediated and taken care of. This project we started a while ago. We met with neighbors and we met with staff, and the layout that we see tonight is not the one we started with. And I believe through working and listening to what the neighbors have to say, as well as hearing staff concerns and addressing some of their ideas to redesign, we have a much better project than what we started with. So with that, we're proposing 78 units. There's 31 one-bedroom units and 47 two-bedroom units. The majority of the units are concentrated on the west portion of the property in the C2 zone. And those are all two 3-story buildings, 1 4-story building concentrated around a central park or MU. Oh, look at that. I have people helping me. So we removed one of the concerns that we got from the neighbors as well as staff was originally we had more of a central parking area. And the buildings were around the perimeter of the site. See which slide that is. We'll get to that in a minute. We have changed it to this, which we feel like is a much more cohesive area. It fronts for the majority on Orchard. We do have some townhome units that front on Morris Hill. One of the other changes that we made, we eliminated street access from Orchard. As we know, Orchard is a highly used street. And so we eliminated that street access from Orchard and put that on Morris Hill just for ease of access. We have reviewed ACHD's comments and staff report, and we are in agreement with those as well. This is, as we stated, C2 and R2 zoning. The majority of the density is in the C2 zoning. There are 10 units that are in the R2 zoning, which is less than would be required in that same, it's about 1 acre. We could be up to 14 units in that 1 acre. And then we rotated that building also to try to minimize the impact on the neighbor. And there's only 1 balcony addressing that neighbor. We'll get to, so if we look at in the bottom or the top left-hand corner, was the original design. We had some park and 3-story units around the perimeter with parking concentrated in the center. The bottom right-hand is now what we propose, working with, again, with the neighbors, hearing their comments and working with staff, concentrating the buildings up towards Orchard with a nice park setting, playgrounds and gathering areas, and then moving the parking and providing a landscape buffer from our neighbor to the east. So it minimizes any balconies. There are no balconies that really can look onto his property anymore. There was a concern of a solar blockage. He has some solar panels on his house. We did do a solar study, and with this layout, there will be no blockage from his solar panels. The buildings as they sit, I'm sure if I'm smart enough, there's a pointer here, right? Huh, sorry.
You're good. You're good. Happens all the time.
So this building is a 3-story building, although the first floor is 1-bedroom units. The second floor is 2-bedroom units. You can see here in this bottom section with the balconies only on the second floor. So there will be no balconies on the 3rd floor and no way for people to recreate outside. The second and 3rd floor are one unit. So you have your first floor is a 1-bedroom, 1-bath. The second floor is a living area with a balcony, and then the 3rd floor is 2 bedrooms with that for that living area of the balcony. So we get to, oh, there it is. This section right here, these are those balconies. The one property next to us has 1 balcony. The rest of them are divided and kept away from the existing neighbor. So we will be completing the road improvements on both Orchard as well as on Morris Hill per staff recommendations, as well as ACHD recommendations. Detached sidewalk and improving those roads in both sections. Again, I feel like we have addressed those comments. A lot of the comments that came in initially were based on our initial layout. And we've worked to hear those people, address those comments, and then provide with you tonight what we have before you. So we appreciate your time. I'm happy to answer any questions and would request your approval.
Okay, great. We'll sit tight for questions. We'll check in first with the neighborhood association, see if we have a
Sure.
representative from them, and then we'll have some questions, I'm sure, for you.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Do we have anyone from the Morris Hill Neighborhood Association present? Doesn't look like we do. So we'll go ahead and open up this for any questions by the commission to either staff or the applicant.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Blanchard.
a question for the applicant real quick. There does not appear to be covered parking. Is that correct?
Correct. We do not propose covered parking at this time.
So we'll steal a little bit of Commissioner Schaefer's thunder here. And I guess I'd be a little bit concerned about snow removal. We had heavy snow. Where are you guys going to put snow? We don't have any covered parking. So there's going to be a lot of snow.
So we deal with snow removal a lot, and actually covered parking creates a bigger issue for us with snow removal, because then you have not only can you not remove the snow, but you also have the carports or the stanchions from those carports that create an area that are in the way. So we feel like, I don't know if we can get back to I don't know how to get back to the
Yes.
slides.
Staff, maybe we can throw a site plan up.
We'll find the right one.
Thank you.
There we go. So we do have, in planning for snow removal, there are years obviously that is limited snow, and there's years that are heavier snow. So we have to deal with that. So there are areas that I would say, we can concentrate some snow, but we try not to block, because obviously parking is a big deal. Large areas of parking. If we have, and we've had to do it in the past, we'll haul it off site. That's in extreme years. I think we only did that during Snowmageddon. But we are aware of snow. We live in Idaho, and that's, I guess, one of the reasons I like living in Idaho.
Thank you.
Yep. A question for Jesse. Hi, Jesse. So we're dealing with two different zones here, C2 and then the R2 zones. The C2 zone dimensions, they're going to apply those to the project as a whole. For the benefit of all of us here tonight, can you just summarize what the changes are from like the setbacks in C2 versus the R2?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, in general, the C2 and the R2 zones have very similar setbacks when it comes to being adjacent to residential and single-family residential especially. The same setbacks for the C2 would apply for the R2 on the eastern side of the property. Really, the C2 setbacks, the only change is adjacent to Morris Hill. Instead of having a 20-foot setback, they're allowed a 10-foot setback. The general exception also increases the height of the overall project to 45 feet from 35, which they're concentrating along Orchard and away from that single family zoning. And the other thing would be density would be allowed to be higher in the C2 zone than the R2 zone.
Great. Thank you, Jesse.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Finbrock.
I just had a question for staff. So in the public comment, there was some commentary about like sidewalks on Orchard and Garden Street. And I was wondering if you could walk us through the pedestrian connectivity of this application, or at least it looks like to me that we're adding sidewalks, everything's there. So maybe what they're talking about is maybe the corner that is not a part of the application, but I was just wondering if you could walk us through that.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, sure thing. The sidewalks are all proposed as detached, and that's a condition of approval along Orchard and Morris Hill. There's a pretty robust internal pedestrian connection network as well to get to both of those street frontages. The corner lot is not, or lots are not a part of this application, so we cannot require offsite improvements. However, if that was to redevelop, then they would be expected to match what is being required for this development.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
So I actually worked on a ADU for the neighbor next door a couple of years ago, so I'm familiar with the site. And for this kind of townhome property, my understanding is the maximum height in the R2 zone is 35 feet, but this townhome building, the townhome style building is 32 feet. So it actually meets the R2 dimensional standards with exception to the front setback. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Commissioner, or Mr. Chair, Commissioner, sorry, that is correct. They are only using the height that is allowed up to 45 feet along Orchard Street. And then the apartment buildings that are 3-story near the courtyard, I believe are 37. So just above what would be allowed in the R2.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Mooney.
Yeah, following the same line of reasoning as Commissioner Moore or discussion, the townhomes along Morris Hill. So the question for staff, townhomes along Morris Hill, if we were to extend that R2 across, then obviously there's some neighbor testimony, written testimony regarding missing middle housing and a lost opportunity for urban infill. But it appears that what we're going to see there on the east side of this parcel is matching what, as Commissioner Moore said, a kind of a missing middle townhome. Is that accurate?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, well, I think that the comment you were referring to was talking about more owner options. The townhome style building is more of a transition from the apartment style to the single family home. And I think that was a choice by the applicant.
Okay, we're good, gang. All right. Okay. That does it for questions for right now. Thank you. We'll go ahead and open this up for public testimony. A few folks signed up ahead of time here on the sign up sheet. Looks like Mark Henningfeld. Yeah. You'll come on up to the podium. You can start with your name and address. 3 minutes, please.
Okay, Mark Henningfeld, 4815 Corporal Street. I'm just north of the townhome. I'd like to commend the architect for changing things around from the first thing. The reason why I'm here is that the townhome, even though they did change it to where the balconies are on the south side, not on the north side now, The windows are still on the north side. And if you want to look, this is a picture of what it would look like from the third story windows into my backyard. Okay. This is the second story. Now, this was taken at 18 feet. The third story was taken at 28 feet. So you could see it's a bit of a difference to be looking into my backyard. And this was a 10-foot setback. The drone was 10 feet off the orchard, off Morris Hill, and it went up 18 feet, then 28 feet. The only other thing that I'd like to say is that hopefully, as you could see, the outlet onto Morris Hill is aligned with North Stanley. North Stanley is a one little tiny block street. Corporal Street, the street I live on, tees into Stanley. There is a alleyway that goes, if you go up to the end of Stanley, to the left, there's an alleyway between those homes and McDonald's. It's just about one lane. The problem that I see is that as the road, the entrance and exit for the apartments align with Stanley, there might be some people who want to go there and cut down Corporal, or go up to the end and cut into the alleyway to get out on Orchard, instead of maybe if there's a line on Orchard. The Orchard Street light there, it takes 3.5 minutes for it to turn green when you're on Morris Hill, to turn green onto Orchard. That's one of the problems. The other problem, of course, is that at the corner of Stanley and Morris Hill, there is a childcare center there. She has 8 or 9 kids. The parents stop off right there on Stanley to drop the kids off in the morning and also pick them up in the afternoon. If people are coming out of the apartment complex and going straight, that presents a problem with mothers or fathers dropping their kids off or picking them up. Looking at it, I sure would like to see maybe you can only turn there or there and not go forward or straight ahead, because that's a small residential area. Oh, look at that. I'm up. I'm gone.
Okay.
See you later.
Thank you. Okay, we have a few other folks. Looks like Ramiz Ahmed Hoffer. And I'm sorry, we have someone else signed up. I'm having a hard time reading it after you're up.
Hi.
So maybe someone, do you represent the Islamic Center?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And I'm just wondering because the address is not here. So we have a 348 North Orchard Street.
Okay, maybe pull that mic down a little bit, please. Great.
We have address is 348 North Orchard Street, Islamic Center, with the 5 shops, rents. And we have in the back, food bank is 4911. And we have a kitchen there. And we have a school for the kids. The area is too small for us. We have in 4 occasion, celebrate Ramadan, Muharram, Ashura, and there is school every 2 days in the week. We have the kids playing around, and there is every time we have almost between 100 to 150 people. And sometimes we don't have parking to park all these people. We go to the gas station, the one behind right now, they fence it to make an apartment. We get permission from them. So we put all the community on that side. We can get agreement from them. So we having a problem right now with this community. We're having some corruption going on. So we're filing against it to the guy, he took the money. So we have a problem with this guy. So we don't know how we're gonna work with you guys for this building development, this department around there. So. That's what I have.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate that. Okay, I think that does it for the folks that signed up, signed up ahead of time. Excuse me. Anybody else like to testify on this item? The podium is free. Okay, we'll check in online. If you're online and would like to testify, please raise your hand. Okay, looks like we're good on the public testimony. So at this point, we have the applicant come back up for 5 minutes of rebuttal.
Thank you again for the record, Kevin Amar. A couple of the items that I heard that I could address, one of the items had to do with setbacks. And although we are trying to apply the C2 zones in the R2 area, the setbacks, we have a 20-foot setback instead of the 10-foot setback on that front area, and we're maintaining our side yard setback. So we really were trying to keep in mind the zoning of that area and make sure we're not increasing, setbacks or density or the use that we could get otherwise that would be allowed in the R2 zoning. So we're not going to be 10 feet off the road. We will be, our setback's 20 feet currently as proposed. We will work with ACHD. I don't know that you can restrict straight through traffic, but we can look at that, I guess, but I don't know how to really restrict that with, you have to turn right and turn left. So I don't know how to go restrict straight. So overall, we appreciate staff's comments. We appreciate their input. We appreciate the neighbors' input. I know that sometimes developers and neighbors are at odds, and it feels like at this project, we feel like we were able to work together and come up with a better compromise than what we had originally proposed. And I think that's the purpose of public hearings and neighborhood meetings, to get a better project than just one person can decide. So we appreciate your time tonight. I'd be happy to answer any other questions and look forward to your approval.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Amar. I think we're all good on questions.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we'll go ahead and bring this back before the commission to render a decision. Again, we're talking about PUD 22-13.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Mooney.
I move that we approve PUD 22-0013 for all the terms and conditions stated in the staff report.
Second.
Okay, thank you for that. So I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Mooney with a second by Commissioner Gillespie.
People
John,
confuse me with Chris a lot.
sorry, yeah.
Mr. Chair.
I was on vacation last week. I'm a little rusty. Sorry. John, you want to start us off with a little discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. I agree with everything in the staff report, and I think this is a great compromise application that the applicant obviously worked well with the neighborhood. It's a great compromise with the C2 R2 zone, and it matches the city's vision for that corridor. Regarding comments from the neighbors about backyard privacy, we can't really protect that. That's not a land use issue that we could do anything about. And the traffic signal timing that we would see at that intersection there should be able to be solved by ACHD in the future.
Thanks, John. Milt, you good? Okay. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair, if I could
Mr.
real quick.
Blanchard? Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I appreciate the thought that you guys have put into redesigning this project. I know it took some time, but thanks for bearing with staff, because this is one where we just have to get it right. It's on a big corridor that's important to the bench. I will commend you, as Milt would expect me to, on not bringing us a slot development where we could see through on Orchard Street into your development, because we don't want that. The one thing I would suggest, because you're going to have to go through design review, is really pay attention to the materials, because it looks much more urban than it did before. What you came to us with before was like a really suburban looking development, and just like really pay attention to the context. All my architect friends up here would agree with that. Like the context of where this is, it's really in like a central urban area of the city, and the materials especially should reflect that. But overall, this is an area we've wanted to see. housing like that in. It's perfect for it. We need this kind of redevelopment along Orchard and Emerald and all these neighborhoods in Central Bench. So I'm grateful for the housing. And I just, yeah, when you go to DR, pay attention to the small stuff because it's going to matter on that project. So, but thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Any other comments? Okay, a couple of things just real quick, going back to the testimony. I agree with all the sentiments so far. I think it's a great project. Appreciate your flexibility and working with the neighbors to make it better. I think it was a better product than your initial plans. To the questions and comments about ACHD and the traffic flow, that's really sort of an ACHD's purview. So I'd encourage you all in the neighborhood to continue to talk to ACHD as the traffic pattern changes once this development's in place, because they're really the folks that handle the right in, right out, that sort of thing. So that's going to be a change that occurs in the neighborhood. So I continue to support you in talking with ACHD about those changes as needed. And then, you know, it sounds like going to be a busy neighborhood with the Islamic Center. So again, change there. And I think just continue to work with the neighbors, right, and be as cooperative as possible. It sounds like there's quite a bit of activity around that Islamic Center from time to time. So there's probably going to be a little bit of growing pains here as everybody gets settled with this new change in the neighborhood. But again, I'm supportive of the project. I think it looks really good. Okay, we'll go ahead and call the roll. Again, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Mooney with a second by Commissioner Gillespie with all the terms and conditions of the staff report.
Stead,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Aye.
Benfrock,
Aye.
Mooney,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. Okay, we'll move on to our next item, which is item number 3. This is CAR 23-9 and PUD 23-10, Rodney Evans and Partners LLC. This was deferred from our July 10th meeting. Project address is 11880 West Overland Road. This is a rezone of approximately 3.5 acres from R1A to R3D. And then also a conditional use permit for a planned residential development comprised of 138 multifamily units on 3.5 acres in the pending R3D zone. There is also a height exception included. First, we're going to hear from staff, Sabrina Mortensen.
All right, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the item before you is a request for a rezone of approximately 3.5 acres located at 11880 West Overland Road from R1A to R3D. A conditional use permit for a planned residential development comprised of 138 multifamily units and a height exception are also included. The subject property is located approximately 230 feet east of the intersection of Cloverdale and Overland Roads. The Reidenbach Canal abuts the property to the west and 5 Mile Creek abuts the property to the north. The surrounding area is comprised of a mix of uses, including single-family homes, multifamily apartments, a vacant parcel, and office and commercial uses. The site is designated as commercial on the future land use map within which the proposed R3D zone is allowed. As detailed in your packets, the planning team finds that the R3D zone is the most appropriate for the site as it will provide a transition between the adjacent single-family homes and the office and commercial developments at the intersection of Cloverdale and Overland Roads. The applicant proposes to construct 2 4-story apartment buildings containing a total of 138 units. Vehicular access to the site will be provided by a single driveway onto Overland Road, and a recommended condition of approval requires the applicant to provide vehicular cross access to the adjacent parcel to the east if it is redeveloped for residential use in the future. The applicant proposes to replace the existing attached sidewalk along the site's frontage on Overland Road with a detached 10-foot shared use path. Most of the site is located within the floodplain of 5 Mile Creek, and a separate floodplain development permit will be required prior to the submittal of building permits. Due to the floodplain development requirement to raise living space at least 2 feet above base flood elevation, the applicant requests a height exception to allow the apartments to be constructed with a maximum height of 47 feet, where the R3 zone would typically allow a maximum height of 45 feet. The height exception is anticipated to have minimal impact on adjacent properties due to the separation between the proposed apartments and the adjacent uses as shown on this slide. Written opposition was received from multiple members of the public. The full comments are included in your packets and the primary concerns are summarized on this slide. Comments were also received from the Southwest Ada County Alliance requesting specific modifications to the project. As detailed in your packets, the planning staff has recommended a number of conditions, but the commission does have the option to add additional conditions if you feel that's necessary for the project to meet the findings. In conclusion, the planning team recommends approval, and I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Sabrina. Next, we'll hear from the applicant.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Ben Semple with Rodney Evans and Partners, 1450 West Bannock Street, Boise, Idaho, 83702. I also have Jesse Hamilton here with the development team and Brian Wenzel from the architecture firm. I'd like to share a little bit of time with Jesse so he can give kind of an overview of, he's one of the owners of the development team. So I'd like him to say a few words and then I'll come back up.
Okay.
Jesse Hamilton, 1221 South Clarkson Street, Denver, Colorado, 80210. Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, and thank you for your time. Maverick Development prides itself on providing housing options in high quality of life cities, which Boise exemplifies. We have been doing business in the Boise market since 2018. In fact, all 7 of our projects currently in our pipeline are all within the Boise market area. That is how much we believe in this market and our commitment to this market going forward. There are numerous factors we take into account when identifying great projects. One key factor is location. The ability to provide high density, centrally located, transit-oriented communities is critical for the greatest livability for our tenants and our homeowners. Ascent Overland, said project, provides an ideal location and an ability for us to provide an attainable rental housing option for the residents of Boise in a city that is in need of these housing options. Thank you again for your time this evening and for your consideration of our project. Thank you.
Great. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, Jesse Hamilton was, just wanted him to kind of speak to the concept and the theory behind why Maverick Development, the developer of this project, wants to pursue this project and the efforts they've gone to come to where we are today. So first and foremost, we are in agreement with the terms and conditions contained within the staff report. We've been working on addressing a couple of those, which I'll touch on here in a minute. But per the staff's report and analysis, I want to thank Sabrina for the detailed report. As she stated, the rezoning of this is compatible with the commercial land use designation that's on this property and in the comprehensive plan. And it's the most appropriate for the property as it abuts residential uses pretty much on 3 sides. There is a vacant parcel to the east. It's connected to some single family. It is in a suburban land use. So initially there was a project proposed here that was larger that included that eastern parcel. But after talking with staff, R1C was the densest or the highest use, I guess, of that eastern parcel, which obviously does not work with the current model of what the proposal is here. So we went back to the drawing board, looking at just this parcel here that is again in that resident or the commercial land use. All the affected agencies and departments have provided feedback to us, and any concerns from fire and solid waste we addressed, make sure that we have an accessible route all the way around here, and that all the trash enclosures are accessible and serviceable by solid waste. And then we will be going through a future design review application on this project. So there will be some additional review, specifically materials, colors, as well as some additional feedback on site design if they need to provide that. The R3D zone does provide a transition from the busy Overland Road corridor by providing both visual and sound barriers to the homes north of 5 Mile Creek. While and I want to touch on also, we did perform a traffic impact study on this site. ACHD had no concerns with the traffic generated from this project. It falls within the allowable level of service. ACHD intends to make Overland a 7-lane road. We're dedicating an additional right of way to accommodate that in the future. But we are at the current time proposing to build a 10-foot multi-use pathway along there, which would comply with the City of Boise pathway, future pathway plan, and then also ACHD's road section would fit within there. So while these buildings are taller than the surrounding single-family homes, as indicated, there's, I've got a couple exhibits here. Most of these are contained within the staff report that you had. Talked a little bit about the blueprint Boise, the building design and character. We have multiple volumes and masses here. We worked really closely with the architecture firm to come up with a really attractive, more residential geared design, something that's not exceedingly modern, while it also offers the modern amenities that everyone's looking for in development. One of the things I did want to touch on real quickly is the landscape plan here. As we were looking at this site and multiple site visits, as well as aerial photos, and during the neighborhood meetings that we had, both initially on the original design and then touching bases again with them on the new redesign with just this one parcel, we identified some areas that are lacking some vegetative cover that runs along 5 Mile Creek. So as you can see in a couple of these areas, we're planning to plant some additional evergreens to fill in. There's kind of a gap along the middle of the site here. So planting some evergreens in here, and then working within these bubbles indicate the existing riparian vegetation that falls along 5 Mile Creek. So really finding appropriate species and locations to fill those gaps to provide as long of a screen there as possible during the growing season, not only just in the summer when everything's leafed out. And there was some feedback from Boise Parks and the forestry department that they really were excited about the tree varieties, locations, as well as the preservation of that riparian area within the 5 Mile Creek, specifically the floodway. And we will be looking to enhance that riparian area, not only with trees, but some additional shrub plantings, kind of working with forestry, and then trying to find a way to plant and improve that area without impacting the floodway and everything that comes along with that. And by doing those native plantings, we'll also ensure the longevity of the habitat that is currently there for a lot of waterfowl that enjoys 5 Mile Creek, because that's a drain in our irrigation system, never be piped, can't be closed. So that will always be an open water creek there. The PUD is proposed on this project due to it being over 20 units per acre. But other than the height exception, we're not asking for any other reductions or variances. We're not asking for a parking reduction or any setback reductions. In fact, we meet or exceed all of the setbacks of this site, primarily because of the floodplain and floodway that fall on the site. And that floodplain condition is why we're requesting the height exception of 2 feet to go to 47 feet. That 47 feet is going to be measured on the north side of that building to about the midline of the roof structures. Overland Road is approximately 4 feet higher than the site where the building will fall on the finished floor on the bottom floor. So that puts that midline of that roof below actually the 45-foot height when viewed from Overland. And we feel like that the distance from these buildings to the adjacent residential homes will really help mitigate some of the additional height there, primarily because you're looking at some trees that are anywhere from 40 to probably close to 70 feet tall along that riparian corridor. These should have been included in your packet. There were just some updated renderings showing some of those trees and some different angles of view, primarily to show the variation in the color and the form of the buildings that we're proposing. This is a higher aerial view looking from the south side of, Overland, showing the planned trees along the frontage here, as well as some of the trees that we're filling in here, and then trying to replicate some of the heights of the existing vegetation that's along the north there. Again, this with the distance, this one isn't as clear as the one that Sabrina pulled up, but There's approximately 265 feet from the north side of these buildings to adjacent residential homes north of the creek. And then I believe it's 165 feet to the multifamily project that's south of Overland Road. So not only do they have that much distance, there's also the Overland Road corridor there. Again, going back to the density, this site could support 43.5 units per acre with the 138 unit project we're proposing. It's at 38.8 units per acre. So below the density that would be allowed here. It's kind of a tricky site with floodplain is really driving a lot of this. And we really looked at wanting to fully park this, which it is. It actually has more parking than is required, but not in excess of what code allows us to exceed it. We did look, and this is touched on in the staff report as well, that this project is supported by policy 3 of the Southwest Community Comprehensive Plan, which encourages new residential development that is designed to facilitate public transportation and other alternate transportation modes other than a single occupancy vehicle. We've been working with VRT to identify a spot along the frontage of this project, probably very close to the entry of this project, to install either an additional bus stop or a relocation of the bus stop that's currently at Cloverdale and Overland Road intersection. That'll help facilitate and encourage people to use that bus. And right now, VRT has asked for us to put in the standard concrete pad that falls between the curb and that 10-foot multi-use pathway. In the future, after they've evaluated some ridership, they may install a full shelter there at the bus stop that would be in front of this. I also wanted to touch on that bike parking on this project. We have 138 bike stalls inside the building in storage rooms. That is one bike per unit in a storage room, not in a unit. So if a resident want to take another bike up to their unit, they could too. Anything additional to that is outside for guests. So obviously we far exceed the requirement of covering 25% of the bike racks on this project. We did review the Southwest Ada County Alliance feedback. I spoke with the president of their association multiple times. A lot of it had to do with the bus stop, which we've already been reaching out to VRT to talk about. And then one of the other ones that they had suggested in their letter was a pedestrian crossing to facilitate connection to that future low stress bikeway on Lizaso that's east of here. Definitely supportive of a crossing. I'm a little concerned that there's concerns about traffic and stuff backing up on Overland, and then wanting to install an additional crosswalk that's fairly close to the Cloverdale and Overland intersection that is fully signalized with the pedestrian crossing. It's, a few hundred feet, so it could make a difference. I just want to, we'll work with the neighborhood association, and the developers indicated they will provide a supportive letter to ACHD, encouraging them to install some sort of crossing, especially to help facilitate that low stress bikeway there. I think it comes out of Sumter onto Overland, and then it's going to have to jog over to Lizaso. So the recommendation of incorporating commercial on the first level doesn't really achieve the goal of what the developer is looking to do, which is to increase housing in Boise generally, and primarily in this area as well. And we feel like a commercial use on the first level here would increase the need for more parking and probably increase traffic trips into the space. Additionally, there is a community activity center at 5 Mile and Overland Road, which is less than a mile to the east, and some additional vacant LOD zones, a limited office zone within half a mile that could redevelop with some additional office, retail, commercial type uses there. So we feel like that really will help capture a lot of these vehicle trips that any residents of this project would be looking for, as well as provide for employment opportunities for residents as well. I know that there's a lot of people looking for apartments right now. A lot of them tend to fall in areas that don't have access to opportunities for jobs and services like this. So we feel like it is a great spot that will help, facilitate some of that. If people work at, say, Fred Meyer and they live in an apartment, this would be a great spot for them because they can walk to work in, 15 minutes. The height exception, again, I touched on, is based on the floodplain condition and how that's from the north side of the building. The proposed parking does exceed the standards of code. And increasing parking would take up more outside usable space and would go against the desire not only of Boise comprehensive plan and code in general, but I believe some of the neighborhood association policies for reducing dependence on cars and trying to get a more walkable neighborhood. A pathway, one of the items, a pathway along the north side was explored initially. This was when both or all these parcels between Lizasso and Cloverdale were going to be included in the project. The developer is still open to exploring that. When we looked at a location, it falls primarily in the floodway, which cannot be a hard surface. It has to be a permeable surface. And with some of the topography in that area, it'd be really difficult to provide an accessible to all route through the north side there on a permeable surface. Again, still looking at the potential for that, willing to work with the neighborhood association to identify that. But we feel like the pedestrian connectivity and really activity is desired to be along Overland to really, bring eyes onto the street. And with the 10-foot multi-use pathway along there, it really reinforces that. All the stormwater runoff, one of the last items that was from the neighborhood association, stormwater will be collected on site and as is required by Idaho code, kept on site and infiltrated into the ground primarily through some subsurface infiltration beds, as well as some surface swales out in the landscape open space. We got some additional public comments regarding, and as Sabrina pointed out, regarding parking, traffic, and density. And as shown in both ACHD and the City of Boise staff report, the project meets or exceeds a lot of the requirements of the code. And we believe really provides for an attractive redevelopment of this site that provides for additional housing units that will help alleviate some of the issues that this community is currently going through. I would stand for any additional questions.
Okay. Ben, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Before we get to questions, we're going to check in to see if we have the neighborhood association with us. Sorry, Southwest Ada County Alliance, right?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
we have someone with their hand up online. I'm not sure who that is, but we could check it out.
Okay. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Bill. Hello there.
My name's Carl Larson. I live at 11695 West Besseri Drive, which is next to Lizazo, the street that they were just discussing.
Okay, so you are not representing the neighborhood association then? You're just hoping to testify on your own behalf tonight?
Yes. Did I raise my hand too soon?
Yeah, that's just fine. We'll circle back to you in just a few minutes. Sit tight. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. Looks like we don't have anyone from the neighborhood association, so we'll go ahead and open this up for questions by the commission.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Pinbrock.
So I had a question for staff. And I was just curious, is there a concern that the space isn't being utilized as like mixed use with more commercial or at least some type of commercial project on this space? It seems like a lot of the builds going up in this area is just residential, and we're missing that opportunity to put commercial in with residential and make it truly like mixed use. And so I know that Ben talked about car dependency, but we're going to continue to have that dependency if we don't put some commercial in this area.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Frinnbrock, the site is designated as commercial on the future land use map. We do typically anticipate to see commercial, office, and residential uses in that area. Sometimes a mix of uses on the same site. This property is a little unique with having the canal and the creek on two sides of it. It does kind of cut off opportunities for cross access with the other commercial sites in the area. it does seem well suited for residential use with that in mind. But if the commission does have concerns, there is an option to require a commercial component.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
Thanks, Sabrina. Quick question about there was a lot of discussion in the public comments and the record about the bicycle facilities and the pedestrian facilities. Essentially, does that boil down to creating a new pedestrian bike crossing on Overland that lines up with the entrance to this subdivision or this project? Is that essentially what all of that boils down to? Or is there some other thing or issue that the neighborhood association was thinking we would address? So I'm sorry they're not here because I don't quite understand their comment. Like, what are they suggesting?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, my understanding of those comments is that they have been requesting ACHD to require a pedestrian crossing near the intersection of Lizaso and Overland. So I think what they were hoping for was just to receive support from the applicant for this project and their efforts to obtain that crossing.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, please vote.
So would this commission, even if we wanted to, be able to condition this applicant to contribute to the cost of that kind of crossing if we wanted to?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, I don't believe the neighborhood association is asking for financial support on that matter. I think they're just asking the applicant to provide a letter to ACHD in support of requiring that in one of their future 5-year work plans.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Please, John.
So to pull on that string, some more question for the applicant. If it's a mile between these two crossings, Cloverdale to 5 Mile, and clearly a 7-lane mobility arterial, 40-mile-per-hour speed limits with a pedestrian-oriented, high-density multifamily apartment complex needs a crossing somewhere in there. And obviously the neighborhood's looking at Lozano. Would the applicant be willing to contribute to that as a condition? It's off-site. It'd have to be mid-block, so it would be off-site.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney, that's I don't know if ACHD is supportive of it. Whether or not it was contributed to financially, I'd have to talk to the development, company and make sure that they could understand what the financial obligation would be there, as well as run through a bunch of other meetings with ACHD. While we would like to have one there, there's a crossing that's much closer than a mile. I think it's only about 300 feet to the intersection of Cloverdale and Overland. So, crossing there at a signalized intersection would facilitate that connection right now. I'm not even sure how they plan to cross Overland with the low stress bikeway, or if they intend to push everyone to Cloverdale. So I guess the short answer is probably can't commit to a financial obligation at this point, but would definitely be open to providing, other support in the future as well as a letter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, no.
Just to close this off, because I can't figure it out. Could you put up a site map or a general map of this area and show me where Lizaso is?
Yeah, Mr.
Because
Chair.
I can't, I'm
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
IT
Commissioner
challenged.
Gillespie, that is
Among
shown
other things.
on the screen now. So Lizaso is the street to the east of the properties.
Oh, that thing. Oh, very good. Yeah, so it's offsite. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
They should put it right here.
John?
I had a follow-up question for Sabrina too. So in the ACHD comments, they addressed parking. And it was interesting because the parking is sufficient for this project, right? I thought that's what I read, but then in this actual correspondence, they list that the applicant is providing 173 on-site parking spaces, but it provides less parking than the 193 required by ITD parking general manual. So I think this is a 2-part question, but what why are they referencing the ITD manual? Do we reference that or how do we determine the parking requirement?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Finfrock, when we review applications, we go based off of the parking requirements in our code that were set by Boise City Council when they adopted the code. I believe they're just referencing that as a general reference of what they would anticipate this type of development to need for parking.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, please.
Follow up. Okay, so maybe I don't even need this follow up, but ACHD recommends that the city of Boise require adequate on-site parking for the development. So just to confirm, like you just said, we've already done that based on city code.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Finfrock, that's correct.
I wish when they recommend something, they could just spell it out. Like what type, how many parking spaces do you want? But that didn't happen. It wasn't, I don't even think it's an added condition. So thank you.
Ben, I have a couple questions. So can you walk us through, I think I went through the unit mix, but could you walk us through that again real quick?
I might bring the architect up
Sure,
and have him
yeah, or
answer that
Brian,
if
yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm going to need you back though, Ben, because I have a site question for you after. Hey, Brian.
Hi, Commissioners. Brian Wenzel, Pivot North Architecture, 116 South 6th Street, Boise, Idaho. We've got 20 studios, 73 one-bedrooms, 45 two-bedrooms, and that equals the 138 units.
Okay,
Yep.
great. So Brian, these are all, obviously, we're talking apartments. This is the, what is, maybe might be a question for Jesse too, but is it, are we looking at young professionals? Like, is there a market that we're targeting with these particular units?
Great question. Bring up, owner
Or
looks
is it
like
just
he's
general?
anxious to answer that.
Yeah, sure.
It's young professionals, workforce, housing. Not your large family dwellings, obviously.
Okay.
It's truly the housing need of that entry-level housing opportunity that people are
Mr.
dire
Chair,
for.
I'm so sorry. Could you speak into the microphone?
Oh, I'm
just a little bit
sorry.
more? Thank you.
I'm sorry. Workforce housing in the primary.
Okay. Okay, great. And the reason I ask, and this might be where we want, maybe Ben might chime in, is the site plan feels a bit lacking in amenity. I see a lot of parking and I see sidewalks and I got a little bit of lawn. So, we see a lot of applications that come through here
Mhm.
and, it's a mix, right? Maybe it's housing for families. So you see a playground, right? But can you just speak to how you develop the site plan? Because like I said, it feels just a little bit, maybe like certainly not a priority, maybe. I mean, so you have the
Well,
canal and you've got some constraints
I
there.
understand.
Can you speak to the site plan a little bit?
Yeah, one, the location, first off, is the amenity, providing that access to where you work, to getting to where you're going to work the majority, 5 days a week, then having that access. The other part that we look at is that attainability from a rent rate. As you start adding in pools, everything there within those communities, it drives up your rental rates. Those are all cost additives that get passed on to those tenants, and they burden them when those amenities, and you start looking at the studies, the actual utilization of those items is very low. People aren't utilizing a lot of those amenities, but we put them in because it looks good. It looks good on paper. It's a selling feature that ends up just driving up those rental rates. Now, we did add amenities within the interior of the units, your fitness center, those common areas, because those lower their monthly costs. They don't have to go to the gym. They have access to that amenity there and that recreational area. But by adding in those additional cost items, that I agree, they look good on a site plan.
Right.
They're attractive, but the location within this point is the 5 Mile Creek. It is the general location so that you do have that quick, easy access within the community of Boise.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore. Yeah.
So I have a question. I think this one's going to be for Ben on the floodplain and just looking at where the building's finished floor is sitting. So it looks like you're a few feet above that kind of back parking area and maybe a few feet below overland. So your finished floor is kind of sitting in the middle of that, but just slightly below overland. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Moore, yes, that's correct. So the majority of this site where the buildings sit is approximately 4 feet below the Overland Road sidewalk that's right there now. So by setting that, the base of that building 2 feet above that, or the finished floor of the lower level 2 feet above that elevation of the site, we're 2 feet below the elevation of the sidewalk on Overland and 2 feet above the back of it. So, I mean, it's lowering that height exception on the front. So I think that answers your question. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Janelle.
I just had one more question for staff. I didn't see a comment from the school district. Did you, is that missing from the pack, or are they like they didn't respond?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Finfrog, we did transmit the application to them, but we did not receive comments from them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We'll go ahead then and open this up for public testimony then. Okay, thank you guys for answering the questions. We had a few folks sign up ahead of time. We have Jerry Finnegan and Roger Bourne and then Wendy Dahl. You just want to come on up in order there. The podium is free.
Commissioners, I'm not a professional. I'm just the poor schmuck that's been paying taxes to the city of Boise for 30 some years. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. We do not live in the immediate area, but we live a stone's throw away across Cloverdale Road. My name is Jerry Finnegan. I live at 12459 West Castlewood Drive. We have a small subdivision of 34 homes, single family dwellings. And we feel as a group that the population density is not a fit for this neighborhood. And there's a number of reasons for that, not just the visual and aesthetics of the neighborhood. We have a wonderful neighborhood now, and we're just afraid as more and more people come in, that will change. A couple of our concerns, though, have already been raised, but I wanted to mention them again. One is schools. I don't know how many children will be living in these 138 units. There is one elementary school south of this area, off of Cloverdale Road, and it is already 20% over the average teacher to student population. It is already crowded, and putting more children in this area is not a good idea for anybody. My other major concern is that the traffic in this area, I don't know where ACHD gets their figures from, but they apparently have never driven through this area from 3 to 5:30 in the afternoon. We almost didn't make it to this meeting today. It took us longer to go the 1 mile from Cloverdale Road to Eagle Road than it did to drive from Eagle Road down here. It is a mess, and it is hazardous. There have been a number of accidents trying to get out of our subdivision. We have one road coming out of our subdivision, just like this subdivision will have. We have no choice. We have to go onto Cloverdale Road. At times, the light at Cloverdale and Overland backs up over the freeway, more than a quarter mile, probably more than a third of a mile. And it's just a mess. You cannot get through the two lanes of traffic to make a left-hand turn coming out of our subdivision. And I've talked to several of our neighbors who said they've just given up on trying to leave the subdivision. And that's, for safety reasons, if a fire truck or police ever had to get through there, that's an issue also. So as concerned citizens from the general area, not necessarily this specific area, we would like to see some other location for this development.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Roger Bourne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. I'm Roger Bourne, 11545 Domingo Street. Boise. That's in the Lazazo subdivision nearby where we're talking about. I don't represent anybody. I'm just here today because of my concern over the traffic congestion at that big intersection of Overland and Cloverdale. And so I drew a picture. To bring to your attention that I'll pull it here so I can see. There. This
You might need to pull the mic. Yeah, sorry. There you go.
The proposed development is essentially landlocked. The canal is on one side and this 5 Mile Creek is on the other side. And so has been pointed out, all of the traffic has to go onto Overland. And right now it's 5 lanes. And as I believe I understand, another turn lane is proposed that will help traffic go north on Cloverdale. But that's not going to help the traffic that has to come out of this subdivision or this proposed development. Now, I'm told that there's 138 units and that they estimate 1.5 vehicles per unit, which my calculator says is 203. And if that's 203 more vehicles, they all have to go out onto Overland. Now, if they want to turn right, which is to turn west, well, they have to deal with this traffic. But if they want to turn east, they have to turn into a dedicated turn lane into oncoming traffic that's trying to turn to go south on Cloverdale. And so all this talk about bike lanes and people lanes and that sort of thing, I don't know what they're talking about because this is 40-mile-an-hour traffic right now. And this is what it looks like. The gentleman who just talked before me has it right. This is what it looks like. I'm standing on the freeway overpass looking south on Cloverdale. I'm just about, well, I'm a little more than 4/10 of a mile from where I'm standing to the intersection. And as you can see, there's already cars with their brake lights on, stopped waiting for that intersection. That's nearly 1/2 mile of cars. And here's what it looks like coming the other direction. I'm standing more than 100 yards away on Overland going west. All of this traffic is going towards the intersection right past the proposed development. And every one of those 238 cars have to come out onto Overland and turn into this oncoming traffic lane. Now, this is all residential. There's no commercial areas here besides Fred Meyer's, which is a mile away. So people are going to be moving in their cars or in the bus, but that's what the traffic congestion looks like. And I just think that it's too much and too close to an intersection. Thank you.
Thank you. Wendy Dahl.
My name is Wendy Daly. I live at 11949 West Armgood Drive in Boise. I just live across the street from this proposed development, and I oppose the rezone mostly on the premise that there's so many more better options, like a neighborhood office, like the other commissioner said, the mixed commercial. There's opportunities. We just don't have enough commercial there that would benefit the residents that are already there. The density is already so high that you put in 138 apartments with lack of parking, it's going to inundate this neighborhood. It's not going to aesthetically improve it or make it look better or make it better for the community. And I love this sign, there's nothing we can't do better. We can do better than rezoning this to a high density area where there is nothing that's 4-story high in this neighborhood. It would be such an eyesore and such an impact to the density on the roads, on the safety, on the kids. Like I say, there's no green space, there's no playground, and we know that people don't give up cars. They just don't, not in Boise, Idaho. We love our cars. And so we are going to we will invade the other neighborhoods. And I tell this from experience because I live in Pepper Hills. They put 4-plexes in front of our subdivision, just 4-plexes. Now we have cars now because they don't have enough parking spaces that invade our neighborhoods and park in front of our homes and take the parking spaces away from my family. So my family can't even come visit and park in front of my house because it forces that parking into the neighborhoods and impacts my way of living. And I know that this developer wants to make it sound like it's really nice and it's going to be pleasing. But I've talked to enough neighborhoods and have been an HOA president to know that this is not something that we favor and we do not want it. And this type of density is just out of reason for this neighborhood. We live on the southwest edge of Boise, across from Meridian. We live out there because it's suburban. It isn't urban, and we don't want it to be urban. We want to have a clean space where our children can enjoy and walk and bike. The only park is inside of Pepper Hills. And so all that traffic is then driven into our neighborhoods where the parking's in front of our housing, the trash. Our HOA has had to increase our budget for picking up trash just because of those fourplexes, because now we have to pick up dog refuge. We have to pick up their garbage that they litter. We have their traffic on our paths that we have to pay for and maintain, and their dogs that then have destroyed bushes and trees in our neighborhood. So we take the impact of that high density. Now you put 138 apartments right across the street where they are landlocked. There's no green space, there's no playground, there's no nothing for these people to do but to invade into those neighborhoods. It's going to impact our quality of life to such a degree that it's going to make it so uncomfortable. And I plead with you to think about other types of rezoning like condominiums or townhouses or something, or mixed use where, and Commissioner has brought that up. There's just so many better options that you could do. I plead with you to consider some other type of zoning than to change it to this high density impact to our neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, is there anybody else who'd like to testify? That's all the folks that signed up ahead of time. They testify. The podium is free. Just come on up in order here.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Betty Berman Solo, and I live at 1970 Cananera Way. And which is less than a half a mile from this proposal on the south side of Overland Road. I have been with the Southwest Ada County Board since the neighborhoods group inception in the early 90s. And for over 30 years, the Southwest Ada County Alliance has considered Overland Road our gateway to the Southwest. So our concern that this road remains livable, attractive, and welcoming as development progressed has been a long time concern, just as Vista Road has been for the neighborhood residents there. Our neighborhood has been concerned about encroachment of billboards and commercial signage that would be counter to blending the existing residential and the retail uses with proposed uses. To date, our boundaries within the Southwest Ada County Alliance do not include 4-story structures. It just would be an eyesore at that location. And probably the commissioners have to have a visual opportunity to see that area. Could I ask staff to put up the preceding layout of the aerial layout of that proposal? When the proposal was first presented with the parcel to the east, there were major concerns with respect to the very dissimilar density. 2 buildings with 4 stories adjacent to single-family existing homes and safety moving in and out onto Overland in general. Those were the concerns. At the neighborhood meeting that was well attended, there were no residents that stated approval, only concerns. With the current proposal, still with the 2 towering 4 stories, 138 apartment proposal and only Overland Road access, it seemed that ACHD would require a cumulative projected traffic study on Overland at the very least, and to determine if the build out of this project is a safety liability. There are 2 other residential and commercial projects within a quarter of a mile under construction on Overland Road currently. However, it seems that our ACHD is requiring the connection to the eastern parcel when and if that is available and closure of the Overland Road access at that time. Meanwhile, it seems an impossibility that younger residents will not attempt to cross Overland Road, a busy arterial currently, to go to the nearby park and elementary school. I would support mixed use at this location with a reduction in the apartments to allow for a neighborhood commercial element with parking that provides a walkable and safer addition to the area, or a limited townhome proposal that could be a safer and more compatible proposal on Overland Road. With the current flattening of the
Ms.
apartment.
Burmisola, I'm sorry, you're at your time. If you can wrap it up.
With the current flattening of the apartment market, it would be more desirable to build a product that is still needed and lucrative along this corridor. I also think the value of retaining a portion of this parcel is an opportunity for a much needed aquifer recharge, a pond, something that provides more of an amenity that's currently there. There
Okay.
is a floodplain issue.
Sorry, Ms. Burmisola, you're past your time. We've got some other folks that want to testify. So we want to hear from those folks too. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, my name is Dwayne Dowley, 11949 West Armgood Drive. I'm a little confused. I've heard different numbers of parking spaces. Can I get a solid count of how many parking spaces are actually?
We'll get it. We'll get it for you. Yeah, I don't have it right in front of me at the moment, but we'll get
Okay,
it.
well, that has a lot to do with my testimony because, I've heard 1.5, 1.25 that exceeds the zoning, but I think that's important that we looked at. We have enough parking spaces to handle everything inside that unit. It's landlocked. We need to make sure that those units are, the parking spaces are able to handle up to 2 cars plus visitors that come in to visit. They will have friends, they will have other parking. Also with the traffic, I understand the role of ACHD, and I hear that once in a while. And it's kind of easy to turn that page and say ACHD has looked at it. But I also think that planning and zoning, you have a responsibility to make sure that the site plans contribute and enhance the existing single-family units that are there. So I'd ask you to take a good look at that, not just go on what ACHD does. And I'm concerned when I hear exceptions are made. I understand there are times that that happens, but when exceptions are made by ACHD, when exceptions are made by planning and zoning, we've kind of walked away from standards that have been set for other neighborhoods. That's happened with the Cambria Apartments. When that was set up, there were exceptions that were made by ACHD. There was distances from the light for the ingress and egress. And I wonder if exceptions have been made here. Every time we make an exception, we have a tendency to increase the opportunity for mishaps, and we're not as safe. I thank you for the time. I ask you to please consider. I do oppose the rezoning, and I is one. I heard earlier that the area thinks that we could do with less parking. That's not the case. Everybody I talk to wants to make sure this unit has plenty of parking, that they don't intrude into the other areas. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tanya Clough, and I reside at 10800 West Smoke Ranch, Boise 83709. I live approximately a half mile from this proposed development. I'm also a SWACA board member, although I plan to come here to testify personally instead of for SWACA. My main concern is the 4 stories. There's nothing in our territory that is that high. And asking for the increase 2 feet due to the floodplain, well, then they shouldn't have picked a floodplain to build on. They're going to build an eyesore that's going to stick out like it's going to stick up and stick out like a sore thumb in our neighborhood. It's surrounded, in the back, all by large lot, single family homes. And I'm not sure on the ACHD findings, but the last thing I read, they weren't totally in support of this. They had concerns about only the one entrance coming into there. I think it's a huge safety issue. You got all these people coming out on Overland Road that's already congested. I know when they in their 10-year plan, they planned to increase it to 7 lanes, and they wanted to make it so you could only turn out to the right. I don't foresee people totally abiding by that. I see a lot of accidents and possibly people being killed in traffic accidents. I do have concerns about the lack of open space. In my personal opinion, building it the way they're building it is like a low income housing project. I think we need more commercial in the area, but they keep on rezoning all our designated commercial parcels to residential. And I do believe there needs to be a crosswalk if you guys are going to approve it. I think it's better suited for maybe 2-story apartments. I know they want to get the most bang for their buck, but not at the expense of the residents that already live there. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
First time I've ever done anything like this.
Welcome.
My name is Vince Maggio. I live on 12549 West Castlewood Drive, neighbor to Jerry. I will tell you, if you look at the traffic conditions today, they're horrendous. I'm going to say it. I came here from California just from a job transfer, and the traffic that's on Cloverdale and Overland mirrors something you would see in downtown LA. It's backed up so far you can't even get out. I come from driving in the city, so coming out of my track, I'll gun it and take the chance to get out into that middle lane. But it's scary. You can't get out now. You put all those homes on all those potential people in that area. I asked the committee or the developers, go take a drive down Overland around 5:30, 6 o'clock and see how much fun it is to get from Cloverdale to Eagle Road. You're going to be there a while. Not to mention, you can't even turn left. You got to turn right. Then you're having to drive all the way around the block just to get, to the place you want to go. So I just implore you to take a look at the traffic situation, because you put something in there now, it's only going to make it worse. And then you're talking about putting in some kind of crosswalk. That's going to, just amplify the problem even more. So I don't approve of it. I think there's a better area to go, and Overland's already packed as it is. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else want to testify this evening? Okay, we'll go ahead and check in with the folks online. We have one hand up, it looks like, staff. We good? Okay.
Hi, Carl Larson. Sorry for cutting into the meeting early.
Sorry, you could maybe adjust your mic or your volume. We're having a little trouble hearing you on our side.
Hang on just a second. Let me see what I can do. Okay, how's that?
I think that's a little better. Can you start with your name and address, please?
My name is Carl Larson. I live at 11695 West Besseri Drive. And that is adjacent to Lazazo.
Great. Go ahead. We can hear you fine.
So my concern about this project is in regards to the floodway and the floodplain. I live in the RLR Park subdivision, and it's a fairly new subdivision. It was built in 2015, adjacent to the floodplain. So our subdivision is right along 5 Mile Creek. When they were building our subdivision, they had to bring in a lot of fill and elevate the subdivision to get it above the groundwater. Even with the amount of fill that they put in, a lot of the homes in our subdivision, the crawl space is still flooded. They managed to work through that, get the subdivision built, and where the level we're at right now, our crawl spaces are dry. But looking at this project, looking at the proposed the floor plan or the layout that they sent, comparing it to the satellite map of the area and the FEMA map, a couple things. One, it looks like the proposed plan actually does encroach on the floodway on the northeast corner. And the second thing, these maps have not been updated since 2003. So a lot of what they're going to build, a lot of hard surface, a lot of that parking lot, I believe may encroach on the floodway. Definitely the floodplain, but also the floodway. So I think that there needs to be a hydraulic engineer study done to determine how much of this development is going to be underwater, when it floods, and that area does regularly flood. It's currently a marsh. And how many of the residents' cars in that parking lot will be underwater on a periodic basis. But not only that, but the potential damage that it could cause to homes in the surrounding area by altering the floodplain and diverting some of that water that would have otherwise flooded that marsh. Our houses are up just high enough right now that our crawl spaces are dry, but if they alter that marshland, with hard surface parking lot, how do we know this isn't going to damage our homes?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Larson. And looks like staff, I think we had one more hand up. Melody Turner. Okay.
Yes.
Hello.
This is actually Ben Turner. We are both here, my wife and I, and one of our neighbors. I'm at 12011 Florida Drive. I am in agreement with all of the concerns that have been brought forth, so I don't need to go over that. I guess one of our biggest concerns is our neighborhood. Our backyard faces 5 Mile Creek, borders on the creek. And a 4-story facility like that looming above our homes it's just kind of overwhelming to us. All of those 4 stories, 3 and 4 stories looking into our back bedroom windows, it's just, and it puts quite a blockage in our view of the rest of the world. It seems like we will be kind of claustrophobic there. And so that's one of the big concerns we have, along with all of the other traffic concerns that are already a problem, which will, I think, only increase. And that's the main thing that I wanted to share.
Okay, thank you.
Melody?
Okay, staff, looks like they're unmuted, so we must be good. Okay. All right, I think that does it for all of our testimony. I'm going to go ahead and close the public testimony, hearing portion of this item. We'll go ahead and bring it back to the applicant for 5 minutes of rebuttal, Ben?
Let's try that.
Okay, let's go for it. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, yeah, a lot to unpack a little bit. So first of all, yeah, the design of this building, it started out a little bit more modern than this. After some feedback from city staff, the architect went back, redesigned this building or these two buildings to be a lot more residential in form. There's more pitched roofs on it. There's some shed roofs on there, a lot of different forms that are reflective of more traditional land or traditional architecture on residential homes. We anticipate that there will be additional feedback at design review once we get there to further kind of refine this design. One of the conditions of approval was to look at a different color palette and some different materials on one of the buildings so that these didn't look too similar and create too much of a kind of monoculture, if you will, along that frontage there. So I feel like that's going to address kind of the design of this structure in this location. We do feel like a commercial or retail or other C-zoned property here or project here could increase the impact on the neighborhood because it could either have more traffic. I mean, it's really hard to guess at what you could put in there, but based on the uses allowed in a commercial zone, you could generate a lot more traffic. You could generate uses like a car wash or restaurants of some kind that could have a lot more impact, in my opinion, and additionally not buffer as much as another residential use. I get this is an apartment building, but it is a residential use. So this is a residential against residential. The developer really believes in what they do. They build these, they own them, they manage them. They do not build these and sell them. They don't get these things paper approved and then sell the project to somebody else to come in and manage this. So in talking with the development team, they're very committed to this community, as he very well outlaid at the start of this, the hearing on this item. Traffic is problematic really wherever we are in Boise right now. Housing, it's a little counterintuitive. When you get it closer to where people want to go, then they don't have to drive as far or drive at all. It can be a little counterintuitive, but providing density closer to places where people want to go, like a community activity center or an elementary school, they can walk or bike there much easier than if they live in Meridian or Nampa or Caldwell, where a lot of people live now and drive into Boise. So this is helping address some of that. I also want to touch on one thing that I heard recently. This is just in general. The United States currently has more square footage of surface parking than it does for residential square footage for housing, which is unreal to me. So asking for additional surface parking or even additional parking to me doesn't make a lot of sense when we need to design housing for people and not design houses for cars. Because right now we're effectively designing houses for cars. We do have a decent amount of green space on this. The western end of this, where it really gets narrow, is an open lawn area for passive recreation. It's approximately 3,000 square feet on that end of open green space area. There's also, independent of that, 2,500 square foot dog park for resident use, which is another amenity. The amenity space inside this building is a kind of community center area and fitness center. It does not have a play structure on the site. That is correct, but that is by design. As the developer talked about, a lot of those things get used by a very small handful of people that live in these units, and a lot of the rest of them go other places to recreate. Additionally, the demographic, the target for their types of product is not large families with a bunch of small children. These are young professionals. These are potentially teachers at the elementary school or anyone that works in that area. So that's really what this is geared to. There's a reason that there's not child-oriented amenities, because it's not really appropriate to put in the type of development that they want to build. Does that mean there'll be no children living there? No, there could be, but it doesn't mean that this is all going to be two parents, two families, or even single parents with multiple kids. And the unit sizes reflect that, with studio and 1-bedroom apartments, it doesn't lend itself to large families, even 2-bedroom apartments. I heard a lot of words during, the neighbors' concerns about livability, commercial signage, billboards, traffic. If you put a commercial project on this site, there's definitely going to be signage. The signage associated with this building does not have to be that great. We did a traffic impact study that fully vetted this project. City of Boise required the cross access, not ACHD. They are not going to, I've not seen anything that requires the closure of this entry if the parcel to the east redevelops. And we feel very good about what the civil engineer's evaluation of this site that is going through the floodplain development permit process on this. We're not requesting any exceptions with this PUD other than the height exception. We are meet or exceed all setbacks from all boundaries. And I did want to touch on, there's 166 proposed parking stalls.
Great.
There's 159 required for residents and guests of this project, this size. And it's all, as I know all of you know, but a lot of this is based on unit size and the bedroom count, not just per unit. As a studio isn't going to have 1.5 cars associated with it. I think that's addresses most of the items that I saw here. I know that I'm over my 5 minutes, so I'd like to stop and stand for any additional questions.
Okay. I think we're good there, Ben. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and bring this item back before the commission to render a decision. We've got, 2 items here, gang. We've got the, excuse me, I'm sorry. We've got the rezone, and then we also have the PUD. We can take them up independent of one another, or we can take them up together or as one. Up to you all.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
I'll take them both together. I move that we recommend approval of CAR 23-9 and approve PUD 23-10 for the reasons stated in the staff report with all the terms and conditions in the staff report.
Good. We got I got a motion to approve both items. I have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Milt. Okay. Jennifer, you want to start us out on some discussion?
Sure. I think, the thing that sticks out the most for me for this particular site is the fact that it's in a floodplain. It's a pretty tricky site. Regardless of whether it was commercial or whether it was residential, you're still going to be dealing with that kind of delta from your base flood elevation to your finished floor. And I think, in terms of the height and the height exemption, I think a lot of development either down the road when that activity center is built up more, or now you could be dealing with some height exemptions, some height issues there just to get out of that base flood. Everything is going to be a little bit higher. However, I think it's with the height exemption is a little bit deceptive because you are measuring from that lowest point, but from overland, it's actually slightly lower than overland. So the way it's measured here is a little bit different than how it would be measured in most of the applications that we see, honestly. So I think that's kind of makes me feel pretty comfortable about the height exemption because, from the road, from the majority of your kind of vantage point, your perspective, it does comply if you take it from that point. Otherwise, I think looking at the sections, I think the developer isn't designing anything that's overly tall. The floor to ceiling heights, they don't look, they're relatively modest and they're nothing, particularly extravagant or anything like that. It's a very modest product. So it's really, I feel good about it being the floodway area. And then in terms of cars in the floodway, if I'm looking at our packet page 352, it looks like the parking area is entirely outside of the floodway. It's in that 100-year flood zone, but not in the floodway itself. And then with the traffic and all of that, I think that the developer is going, extra steps to kind of encourage biking and things like that with ample indoor bike storage and items like that, additional parking, but all that bike storage, I think it does go a long way. So for those reasons, I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Jennifer. Milt, any other? Oh,
No, I'm good. I'll
You're good?
wait.
Mr.
I'll
Chair.
wait and fire back.
Okay. Janelle, please.
I'll start the fire back. So I'm not in support of this motion. I just think that, I think the density and the height exception is appropriate along the corridor. But I just think we can do better with the mixed use option. I think the application, like we mentioned, it lacks amenities. It just overall lacks the opportunity for us to put commercial in the space. And I think that's, it's in dire need in this area. There's a couple comments made by the applicant, like amenities. He said the location is the amenity, but I don't think that's how our code reads. I think that our code reads that amenities are important, and that's why we require it in almost every application. It was also commented that we design houses for people, not for cars. But without commercial space in these livable communities, I mean, you should probably plan for cars because we're going to need to drive to the commercial spaces. Or commercial locations. So I'm not in support of this application. I think it has some strong points. And again, I think that density and height is definitely appropriate. I think that's what we're going to be looking for along these more traveled corridors. But I just think we could do better with the design.
Okay. Thank you, Janelle.
Mr. Chair.
John.
So I got a question for Commissioner Finfrock. So, Janelle, does that mean that you're not in support of the rezone or the PUD? Which one?
Since, Mr. Chair, since the motion came in front of us in both, just as one, I will be against the whole thing because we didn't separate them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Milt, please.
So I've kind of been tilting against this mixed use requirement for 12, 14 years. And, we have a fundamental problem, right? Which is the demand for commercial development is much lower now than it used to be. And the demand for residential development is much higher. So a lot of the zoning language and the way we've architected the rulemaking hasn't really caught fully up to that problem, right? There just isn't very much commercial demand anymore, like there used to be for lots of stuff. And so I agree with Commissioner Finfrock that I wish there was a mixed use component. I've wished that for 12 years, going way back to when we tore down Ben's Crow Inn and it's supposed to be commercial and we didn't put a good fried clam place back, and that broke my heart. But this is just, to me, I can't vote against something because of that, because I feel like we're just pushing into the wind on that. There's just no demand for commercial space. So the alternate, what's going to happen is if we say no, no one's going to build commercial space there because it's been there for a long time. And what's going to happen is all the residential development is just going to move west and south. So all the traffic we worry about is in some sense going to get worse. So I, as a commissioner, have been forced in a sense to acknowledge that the goal of mixed use just is not going to work in significant, or not going to work as well in significant parts of the city. So that's kind of where I'm at on that issue. I wish it weren't that way.
Mr. Chair, can I just comment to that?
Yeah, please.
What's different than 12 to 14 years, though, is that we are putting a new code in front of us and we are increasing density and we are asking for this. This is the vision of SID, the city of Boise. And so I think that if we are going to start like wanting to build these communities like the code, the revised code says, then we have to start requiring or even demanding as that commercial space go into these residential communities, because we all know that when there's commercial space added, it makes for a better community. And you can walk to your coffee or walk, to a little restaurant, and then, that is what's desirable. And I don't see how we do that unless we start holding some of these applications to that standard. And it's not just, anytime an application comes in front of us in any area of Boise, we look at it and we praise it and we say, that's a great project. And I think we just need to do it everywhere in Boise, not just where we think that is desirable, because we can make this area desirable if we just put a little bit of standard to the developers.
Thanks. The right side of the dais has been quite quiet this evening. Any thoughts?
Mr. Chair.
Sorry, my right, everyone else's left.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Stead.
Yeah, Janelle has me a little bit convinced. I can see both sides for sure. We've definitely denied applications in the past for not including mixed use in areas where we would like to see mixed use. And I think I agree with that point that, you know, those projects have been much closer to the university or closer to downtown. But why not? You know, I know that we're striving to make walkable, livable neighborhoods all over the city. And so why not here too? I would love to see mixed use here. So I'm a little on the fence right now, but leaning in that direction.
Okay. Thank you. I put you on the spot. Thank you. Okay. Any other thoughts?
Mr. Chair.
John, yeah, please.
Yeah, Commissioner Finfrock is compelling arguments about the mixed use, but I'm in support of the motion after listening to all that, and primarily because of the issue that this would be appropriate closer to downtown or closer to the urban core. This is a bit outlying. It is on a transit corridor, so that's what we want. We want density on a transit corridor. But commercial in that area, I'm agreeing with Commissioner Milt Gillespie on this, and that we can't push it in that sense. Well, I've got the mic. I do want to make a point about the school, and I really appreciate the testimony regarding that. But the fact that the school district didn't even respond to this is infuriating and unprofessional. And I think the public needs to be a little bit more accountable to the elected officials and the board members that allow the BSD staff to not respond to these inputs. So please go to the polls when the school district is up for elections. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, John. Okay, good discussion.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Chris.
Just real quick, I guess the only hangup I have is that the future vision for that site is R1A. So it's not even mixed use. Like we weren't even going to make an MX1 or anything. So even after, years of planning, we still said, we've all agreed after going through the zoning code rewrite is that should be R1. So that's a bit of a challenge.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Jennifer.
Just to reiterate, I think that Commissioner Finfrock made an awesome, an awesome point. And I totally agree. I think that mixed use here would be fantastic. And I suppose maybe it's kind of what we always grapple with, which is, the chicken or the egg. If you get more of a walkable type product here, maybe that'll help spur some more mixed use nearby. It's not necessarily on that site, but maybe maybe this is the first move, and then you've got something later that's kind of helps to encourage that activity center. So it could be just a chicken and the egg sort of scenario as well.
Certainly. Okay. Well, thanks, everybody. Good discussion. Yep. I'll be supporting the motion. I have been vacillating as well over several of these issues during the testimony tonight. I think Chris, I fully agree with Chris that, in the land use map, all the land use maps has always been residential. There's never been commercial shown on any of the land use maps for this particular parcel. So I default to that in many ways. I understand the concerns over the building height. But, I think that the team did a nice job of detailing how the buildings will sit into the site and the space that we're talking about. We're well over 150 feet to other structures in both directions, which is a long distance So if there's ever a place to put a 4-story building next to residential, this is probably the spot, just because of that distance that you have to make it a little more amenable to the site. So, yeah, so anyway, I'll also be supporting the motion. I appreciate all of the feedback tonight and certainly understand the concerns over traffic and the neighborhood developing and changing over time. So continue to talk to ACHD. I'm concerned over the comments that we don't take traffic and pedestrian crossings and that issue seriously, because we do. I mean, we agonize over that up here. We agonize over sidewalks every single meeting. So we hear you on the concerns. Unfortunately, the situation we find ourselves in the Treasure Valley is that ACHD is the traffic body, right? So we have to default to them in many ways. So I would encourage everybody to continue to express your concerns over the traffic and the growth in that part of the city, and see what they can do with time. I mean, certainly Overland's going to change. It's going to 7 lanes. So that will be a big change as well. Unless there's any other final comments, I'll go ahead and call the roll. Again, we had a motion to approve and a recommendation to approve the rezone. The motion was by Commissioner Moore with the second by Commissioner Gillespie. Go ahead and call the roll, please.
Stead,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Aye.
Benbrook, no. Mooney,
Aye.
so 6 in favor, 1 opposed, motion carries.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. We're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute break. We'll be back at 8:08. I believe the next item on our agenda is item number 4, which is another rezone and conditional use permit. So CAR 23-10 and PUD 23-11, Boise River Builders. Project address is 1200 and 1208 South Leadville Avenue. Rezone of approximately 0.35 acres from R2 to R3D. And then a conditional use permit for a planned residential development comprised of 10 multifamily units on said 0.35 acres. We'll hear from staff first. Sabrina Mortensen again.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the item before you is a request for a rezone of approximately 0.35 acres located at 1200 and 1208 South Leadville Avenue from R2 to R3D. A conditional use permit for a planned residential development comprised of 10 multifamily units is also included. The subject properties have a compact land use designation, which would not typically support R3 zoning. However, the comprehensive plan states that parcels less than 1.5 acres in size do not have to adhere to the land use designation if other policies of Blueprint Boise support the proposed use. As detailed in your packets, the proposed development is in compliance with multiple goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. The subject properties are in close proximity to existing transit facilities, designated bikeways, and neighborhood services, and there is existing R3D zoning in the area, including the adjacent property to the west. Therefore, the planning team finds the proposed R3D zone to be the most appropriate for the site. The applicant proposes to construct 2 3-story apartment structures containing a total of 10 units. All parking for the development will be accessed from the adjacent alley and will be podium parking within the ground floor of the apartment buildings. There are existing detached sidewalks with street trees along the site's frontages on Leadville Avenue and Beacon Street, which will be maintained. A recommended condition of approval requires the applicant to provide an arborist report and tree mitigation plan for review with the subsequent design review application to ensure that the loss of any healthy desirable trees which will be removed will be sufficiently mitigated. The proposed R3D zone has a maximum allowed height of 45 feet, but the proposed apartments will remain within the 35-foot limit of the existing R2 zone. The Southeast Boise Neighborhood Association submitted written comments in opposition to the proposal. Their comments did not identify any specific concerns regarding the proposed project design, but expressed general opposition to the requested rezone to R3D. However, as detailed in your packets, the planning team finds that the application complies with all rezone and PUD requirements and recommends approval. And I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Sabrina. Next, we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Todd Blackwell. I'm with Boise River Builders. I'm representing the applicant. My address is 5166 North Coralero Lane, Boise, Idaho, 83702. The land in question is currently occupied by two single-family homes. Both are non-owner occupied and have been for a number of years. They've been rental units. The owner is desiring to improve the property with its proximity to Broadway. Walking and getting out of the car is one of the key points of this property. They do have 5 spots underneath each unit. And then the front units that are along Leadville are actually ADA accessible. All of the units are 2-bedroom, 2-bath. They also offer a patio up on the roof that allows all of the residents to have a common area within each building. There is spaces for bicycle parking, handicap parking. That's pretty close to it.
Okay.
All right.
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. I think we have Eric Berg is online from the Neighborhood Association. Mr.
Hello.
Berg, good evening. Hello.
Hello, I had one request, whether I could have, if I could share just a picture of the new and old zoning.
Yeah, hang on 1 minute. I believe staff has to make some changes on our side here with the tech.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I think we're all set.
Excellent, thank you. Eric Berg, 1301 South Grant Ave, representing CENA. So transitions are always where the utmost attention to detail needs to happen. Whether it's in construction where trim must be cut perfectly to transition from walls to floors, or windows and doors, or parts of our every lives, it's these transitions that are often the trickiest to navigate. In order to do so, it's necessary to not only pay attention to detail, but take a holistic approach to make sure that everything lines up just right. It's in this spirit that the board of the Southeast Neighborhood Association voted unanimously to oppose this project due to its spot rezone along an incredibly important corridor in our neighborhood. Beacon Street is less than a mile long, but in that time runs through R2, R3, U, C2, and LOD zoning districts. In the new code, C2 and LOD will be replaced with 2 levels of mixed use. Beacon also provides the primary connection between Boise State and Park Center, which is the major east-west connection for the north side of CENA. Suffice to say, there are an incredible amount of uses for this corridor, including bus lines and even the Leadville Bikeway, all of which would support more density. But the question being asked right now is, what is the appropriate zone for this area? Blueprint Boise shows this location as compact, and R3 is not listed as an implementing zone for that future land use designation. It's true in the code that it says under 1.5 acres you can do that, but we have to ask ourselves that what is the future use and what is the best use for this area? CENA does not contend that zoning does not need to be looked at here. However, doing so in a spot rezone that does not meet the compact implementing zone code as per Blueprint Boise is not the solution. The danger of spot rezones is that it piecemeals transitions, creating incompatible and improper uses that don't align with the city's, neighborhoods, or development's best interest. Beacon as a whole needs to be looked at for its mix of zones and uses, and especially as we transition into the new zoning code, that needs to be discussed with all stakeholders on how best to look at the piecemeal zoning of the area and streamline it to a more beneficial and cohesive mix. In my own neighborhood, Beacon provides the dividing line between the U district to the north and the residential and commercial to the south. Beacon between Broadway and Park Center may or may not need to provide a similar delineation between zones. But until we approach it with a holistic approach, we invite more chaos for the area and any future development. The only reason we came to that delineation was through a years-long process with the city, Boise State, SENA, the neighbors, commercial stakeholders. And I think we came to a really good solution, but it was only through doing it as a holistic approach and not spot zoning pieces and parts before we got there. The applicant's only argument for the rezone is that it needs to occur in order to accommodate the density they request. This reason is not sufficient to justify the rezone. The next two R3 the applicant refers to is either across Leadville or across Beacon. Traditionally, roads are used to transition zoning, and attempts are made to maintain similar zoning within block faces, keeping transitions from one zone to another to a minimum within a block. What the applicant is requesting amounts to a spot zone, which is not allowed or encouraged by the current or upcoming code and should be rejected. In my own neighborhood, we have R3 north of Rossi, but south of Rossi, it's R2. It doesn't transition in the middle of the block. And this is probably best practice for throughout the neighborhood. SENA wants to make it completely clear that we think this would be an incredibly excellent opportunity for us, the city, ACHD, the applicant, and all the other stakeholders along that portion of Broadway to get together and talk about what the future could look like. It may need to have different zones. R3 may be an appreciable, a correct zone on areas of Beacon. But the transitions along Beacon are complex and require a collaborative approach to build the kind of an area that we can hold up as a model for other parts of the neighborhood and city. We encourage you to reject this application because of the rezone, and we look forward to seeing what the applicant brings forward, perhaps the same project or different, as we figure out what the future of Beacon and the zoning along Beacon will look like. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berg. We'll open up this item for questions by the commission.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
So obviously this isn't terribly far from my own home, so I'm really familiar with the site. Is there, so for this particular, I'll start with the building and then we'll move to the site, but for this particular building, is there an elevator in here at all?
Commission. There is no elevators in this. There are two sets of stairways for fire access. There's a front stair set and then there's a rear stair set. They're going to be going up to 4 units. So the first floor will be on the main, and then there'll be 2 sets of stairs going up to the second floor has 3 units. And then the 4th floor has a single unit plus the deck.
And then Mr. Chair. So for that community balcony / patio, that's intended for all of the residents to utilize?
It is, we do have common area on the property itself, gathering areas, but yes, it would not be elevator accessible to the roof.
So, Mr. Chair. So say you have a handicapped tenant, I suppose, that's utilizing one of those ground floor apartments. They wouldn't be able to use this community balcony patio because there's no elevator.
If they need a elevator, no, there would not be access to that. Yes.
Okay. And so, Mr. Chair, is there anything kind of on the ground floor that would provide something equivalent for those ADA?
Just that we have the open area. If we needed to put, a picnic table area or something like that, but I'm not really sure if that's actually beneficial, especially on this kind of roadway. There to be too many people passing through and maybe loitering in that area and on their property. I don't know. It would have to be something that could get worked out.
Okay. And then, Mr. Chair, so for this balcony and patio, is it considered one of the required amenities, or is this just an optional amenity?
It's part of the open space requirement. And so every unit has a patio on it, but it needs 100 square feet. And so to add to that open space was the upper patio that would be used by the other units.
Gotcha. And then, Mr. Chair, a question for staff on that one. Is it allowed to not be, to have amenity space that's community that's not accessible?
Madam Chair, or sorry, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Moore, for PUDs of this size, the requirement is 100 square feet of open space per unit. The ground floor units would have more than that amount of open space available to them.
Okay. That's all I've got for right now.
Mr. Chairman,
Milk.
this end of the table can't figure out where the cars go to get from the street to the parking stalls. Could you show us, please?
Yeah, they enter in off of the alleyway.
There's a point. Well, there is a pointer.
Oh, they come in the,
Yep.
Yeah.
So the alleyway comes in
Okay,
through a
thank you.
common driveway to both
Okay.
units. So they will be coming off of Beacon Light. And then they have access along with
got it.
garbage and all of that can be on
Got
the
it.
alleyway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mhm.
I have a question for Mr. Berg. Eric, are you still there?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Berg, I appreciated your eloquent discussion of the zoning issues, and you took them on at a pretty abstract level. And you never really talked about any adverse impact or issues that you have with this development as it's proposed. And I was just wondering if Sina or you had any specific issues with what the developer has proposed apart from the zoning issue.
The reasons for our opposition were limited to the zoning issue. And the reasons for objecting to the project was that it's compact zoning, R3 isn't allowed. So this project, if it requires R3 to be built, doesn't fit into there. But there wasn't a specific design oriented thing. We just think it's best practice not to be spot rezoning.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Question for
Chris,
the
yeah.
applicant, real quick. Mr. Blackwell, do I have this correct? The height, the tallest point of this building is 35 feet.
Yes.
Am I correct? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the top of the parapet wall is 35 feet.
Excellent, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah. Yeah.
question for staff. I know maybe everybody on this commission knows this, but what is podium parking and what's the code to say about the parking reduction on that?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Finfrock, podium parking is parking that's within the ground floor of the structure. So in this case, it's not below grade, it's even with the first floor of the apartment building, and it is enclosed. And then our code does allow parking reductions to be provided for the podium parking as well as for having on-street parking available adjacent to the site. A reduction of up to 30% is allowed and the applicant is requesting to utilize those reductions.
Mr. Chair,
Please.
just a follow-up question for staff. So 30%, we're proposing, or the application is proposing 10. We have a required count of 14. Is that, it seems like we might be a little bit off with the 30% or no?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Finfrock, I did do the math when we were reviewing the application, but we can double check that real quick and follow up.
Mr. Chair,
Mhm.
one more question. So the R3 is technically allowed because it's less than 1.5 acres, is that right? So it is an allowed zone?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Finfrock, that's correct. It's not typically anticipated in this zone or in the land use designation, but the comprehensive plan does allow that exception for parcels that are under 1.5 acres in size.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
John.
So the parking reduction, question for staff and the applicant. The bicycle parking is in the podium area, is that right? Next to the vehicle parking?
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay, so it's open to the public
It's open to the public, but you'd have to access it through
Through the-
the alleyway.
through the alley. Okay.
You
so-
could go through the lobby, which also encases the main staircase. which would be like where the mailboxes would be located. So you do have an access through that to the parking garage, but yeah, you'd have to have access to the building or in through the alleyway.
Which is not secure. So.
It is not secure.
Yeah, so the bikes would be on racks, not necessarily secure unless the owner secured them.
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Jennifer?
Question for staff. So there's this bottom there on the upper two floors, there's a good deal of nice articulation and windows and modulation going on. On the lower floor, it's a little bit less so. Was this going to go to design review next?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Moore, yes, the rezone would be to R3D, so there would be subsequent design review.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
John.
So back to the connectivity, the question for staff, there's no mention in our project report about the Leadville Bikeway. And I recall distinctly ACHD made it a huge issue in 2018 because it was the first bikeway in the county that they worked on. And then subsequently, the ACHD report that we have in the packet doesn't even reference a bikeway that they went to extensive lengths to advertise and get people to use. So I'm trying to figure out why we didn't reference any of that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney. I know there were references to comprehensive plan policies that, promote this type of density adjacent to transit. It was probably oversight that that bikeway wasn't specifically called out in the report.
Mr. Chair, one last question for Mr. Berg, for Eric Berg. Eric, you still there?
Yes, sir.
So back to Commissioner Gillespie's question about adverse impact. So the R3 zone, what the applicant's proposing is a height that's complies with the R2 height is. So have you thought about an adverse impact that this spot zoning, as you're calling it, would impose on the applicant?
Adverse,
Yeah, is there an adverse impact that you're or surmising that might be impacting the neighborhood based on the applicant's proposal?
okay, sorry. Commissioner President, Commissioner, I thought I heard you say on the applicant at first, so was my confusion. The impact on the neighborhood is that if you do not do comprehensive zoning, as we saw in the comprehensive zoning reform we just went through, if you don't do it in a comprehensive way, in a collaborative way, you can end up with areas that don't fit other areas and issues, right? So you're going to have this up against R2 on the south side, not separated by a transition, a road, an alley, etc. And common practice in this neighborhood has been when we're putting R2 and R3 next to each other, you either put them across an alley or across a street or some other method of transition. So it's really a best practices, and also just the zoning code discourages spot rezones for no other reason than to fit a project. There needs to be a justification for why that should be R3, and there may be a justification for why, the whole of Beacon needs to be looked at for zoning, but to do it on a lot by lot basis is not encouraged by the zoning code, nor is it best practices.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks.
Okay, we're good on questions? Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. We'll go ahead and open this up for any public testimony. Anybody here would like to testify on this item? No takers? No one else online besides Mr. Berg. So I think we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And at this point, the applicant gets rebuttal from public testimony. So we'll give you a couple minutes if you want to wrap it up.
I do understand the the sense of the question of the rezone. It is across the street. It is on the corner of Longmont and Beacon. It's very similar to, Beacon being a thoroughfare between Broadway and Park Center. It doesn't have a lot of commercial. I think it might have some down there on the east end of it, but it really is residential. This allows students, teachers to be within walking distance of Albertsons, restaurants, their place of work, their place of education. It really fits the neighborhood. There's actually a unit that this is modeled off of on Jefferson at 16th. It really fits well into the neighborhood. It's got, even though there are residential homes in that area also, it just sort of fits into the side. We're not going any higher than 35 feet. So we're staying within that zoning. So we're not trying to dominate over any of the other homes.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll go ahead and bring this item back before the commission to render decision. Much like the previous application, we have two items, the rezone and the PUD. We can do them independent or together, up to you
Mr.
guys.
Chair.
Please.
I recommend approval of CAR 23-10 and move for approval of PUD 23-11 along with the recommended and standard conditions of approval.
Second.
Okay, great. Thank you. I've got a motion by Commissioner Finfrock with a second by Commissioner Blanchard. Janelle?
Yeah, so just a couple comments. We kind of already went through everything, but Sina's point that it's spot zoning. I think there's R3 across the directly adjacent to the property. There's actually other properties in the vicinity that have that R3 zone. It is allowed by the code. And so I don't know, it would be encouraged that way because of it actually spells it out. If it's 1.5 acres or less, you can have that R3 zone. And again, the height is limited to the R2 zone. So we're kind of sticking with the other properties. It shouldn't cause an adverse effect. And so let's see. For that, the application is going to go through design review. So it'll get a second look and parking reduction is allowed for the code as well. So for that reason, I'm in support of this application.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
Mr. Chair, yeah, thank you. I think Mr. Berg brings up a great point because with the new zoning code coming on, we're going to find all of these things that we couldn't anticipate, frankly, with writing 611 new pages of code. So just to throw this out there, that the old code at R2 is 35 feet, but the new code in R2 is going to be 45 feet. So we could very well get Sina could very well get a project if these guys held off and built this after December 1st or came back, they could get a 45-foot tall building that could be something that Sina liked even less, where it could be, divided up into, now they're going to get 10 units instead of the 5 that you would get under R2. But if we had a 45-foot building that we divided up where there were 4 students living on each floor, then you've got 20 people in there, which the neighborhood would probably like even less. So we're going to come across these things as we deal with this new, the intersection of old code and the new code. But yeah, frankly, I think that this project, the neighborhood is going to prefer much more than what they would get after December 1st if we just left it at R2.
Mr. Chair.
Jennifer?
So I'm actually not in support of the motion, but I am in support of the rezone, just not the PUD. And I just can't get over the lack of accessibility to that common amenity on that 3rd level. If you're providing an amenity, I feel that it should provide equal access to everybody, and that's just not being provided here. This is different from balconies versus patios or something like this. This is something extra that would not be accessible to someone who was in a wheelchair. And I'm having a hard time approving something like that. It just feels unequal to me. Other than that, that lower level, it's missing some modulation. There's a lot of really attention and care given to those upper 2 levels, but that lower level is missing some of that too. But in terms of the rezone, I think it's appropriate, especially with, there's a new development going on that corner where the gym used to be. It's a straight shot either to BSU or to the Greenbelt access. I think it makes a lot of sense to put density there and to put a higher zone there. But the accessibility issue is just not something that I can support.
Mr. Chair,
Okay.
I'm okay adding a condition that makes all units accessible for disability reasons, if you would like me to. If everybody on the commission would like that, or if it's supported.
Mr. Chair, I think generally that the way I would probably word it, because I understand that making all units accessible is very difficult for some of these levels. But providing a common space, an equal common space on the ground level would be how I would word it.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Milt, yeah.
I'm sensitive to this issue. I understand it. As I understood the applicant's answer, they had met the requirement for the open space for the folks in the ADA units. I'd be cautious about kind of imposing a pretty major redesign on the building. I'm not an architect, but I think putting in elevators or trying to create many hundreds of more square feet of open space on the ground floor, that sounds really hard. So since they meet, first of all, I'm just glad they have ADA units, period. I really like the development. So on balance, I would support the motion as is without requiring some ADA kind of equalization across all the units.
I was going the same direction as you, Milt. I agree with your comments. They're meeting the code requirement for the unit. I also hear what you're saying too, Jennifer. I understand what you're saying as well, but I'm following with Milt on this issue myself as well, that they've met the code requirement, and elevators in a building this size could kill the project, right? So I think we want to be mindful of that.
Mr. Chair.
Meredith, yeah.
I wondered if I could ask a question of staff. What I'm curious is, are there requirements, as Commissioner Moore is stating, that would require amenities to be accessible by all residents or ADA compliant, or is there anything specific like that in our code about amenities?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, there's not anything in the development code that requires that. I'm not aware of any requirements in ADA and FHA law, but I'll admit I'm not the most familiar with those.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, we can certainly entertain an amendment, to the motion. I think maybe that this discussion is probably, the applicants heard our concerns, and they do have to go through the step of design review. So if there's a possibility of them to maybe look at the ground floor outdoor amenity space at the ground floor, maybe increase in square footages, out there for a shared amenity, that might be maybe the message that we can send here, right? Just to maybe give that another look.
Mr. Chair, maybe add the added condition that design review take a second look at the ADU unit compliance. Is that how you would like a word? Okay. Does that work for staff? Okay.
Jennifer, does that?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Please.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the primary point was just there's a lot of attention paid to that kind of third level amenity. It wasn't as apparent that there was as much attention paid to an accessible amenity on the ground floor. And so that's really the intent here that I'm trying to convey, is to provide an equal amenity on the ground floor as well. So I don't think, putting in an elevator and things like that, I don't think that that's necessary in order to achieve kind of the intent. It's mainly just to provide, a similar area on the ground floor.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with Commissioner Moore's discussion about the amenities in a bit, but because as our packet says, the description of amenities for this project is bike parking, which we talked about earlier is not secure. It's just a rack in an insecure area. Another amenity is off-street parking, which is already publicly provided, and common areas. And the common areas, as we talked about, are not fully accessible. So I'm torn as well.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Milt.
I think we're getting a little bit intense on amenity. This is a tiny PUD. There's no requirement other than just the bare bones. The applicant brought up that it's an ADU. We never asked in any other permit about their ADU issues and accessibility. ADA, excuse me. So we're bringing it up here because the applicant volunteered that the 2 floors will be good for that. And he's showing the handicap parking spaces in the diagram. And now all of a sudden we're talking about a pretty major change in the site design, because my understanding is the top floor amenity, the space is a lot big. It's the whole thing, right? So if you look at what is he going to do on that ground floor? I don't think we're being very realistic here or consistent in the way we're sort of thinking about amenities that aren't even required by the code in this case, right? So I'd just like to temper our conversation on this matter.
Yeah, thank you, Milt. I think we're probably, again, you guys can certainly make the amendment if you'd like, but I think we probably have vetted this out. And I think everybody's heard the concerns, right? And understands Jennifer clarified the comments, right? About the articulation and the detail. So I think we're probably okay. But with that said, you all are making the motions and the amendments. So are we good to proceed? Okay. I'm getting a thumbs up from Janelle. I'm going to go ahead and call the vote then. We have a motion to recommend approval of the rezone and a motion to approve the PUD. Motion was by Commissioner Finfrock with a second by Commissioner Blanchard. Let's call the roll, please.
Stitt.
Aye.
Schaefer.
Yes.
Blanchard.
Aye.
Moore.
No.
Gillespie.
Yes.
Pinfrock.
Aye.
Mooney.
Aye.
6 in favor, 1 opposed, motion carries.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Next one's item 6. Yes. Item number 6, CVA 23-2. The applicant is Luke Grandin. The address is 2923 North Ash Park Lane. This is a variance request to exceed the maximum fence height in the front setback on 0.65 acres in R1C zone. And we're here from Sabrina again from staff.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the item before you is a request for a variance to exceed the maximum allowed fence height within the front setback on 0.65 acres located at 2923 North Ash Park Lane in an R1C zone. The development code allows fences within the front setback to be constructed with a maximum height of 3 feet for solid fences or 4 feet for clear vision fences. The applicant requests a variance to allow a 6-foot solid fence to be constructed within the front setback, approximately 10 feet from the front property line. Construction of the fence has already began as shown on this slide. There is no exceptional circumstance or hardship to justify the variance request. The applicant's letter of intent cites safety and security concerns. However, similar concerns apply to other properties in the area and are not unique to the subject property. The letter of intent also references existing 6-foot fences on the opposite side of Ash Park Lane. However, those fences are located within the street side setbacks where 6-foot fences are allowed, and they do reduce in height within the front setbacks of their respective properties. Additionally, a potential non-compliance of other properties in the area is not sufficient justification for a variance request. Approval of the variance would also conflict with the comprehensive plan, which encourages reinforcing established streetscape character. There are alternatives available, which would allow the applicant to install a fence towards the front of their property while complying with the requirements of code. For example, a fence with a height of 3 to 4 feet could be allowed in the location proposed by the applicant, or a 6-foot fence could be allowed if it were located at least 20 feet from the front property line. In conclusion, the planning team recommends denial of the variance, and I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Sabrina. Next, we'll hear from the applicant.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, my name is Becky Grandine. My address is 2923 North Ash Park Lane. And my husband and I have lived at this address for 13 years now. The first 5 years we spent trying to figure out why we were so sick. It took us 5 years to finally get to the bottom of it, and that we had toxic black mold. We spent the last 8 years completely tearing down our house because of the mold. What we thought was a remodel was actually a total tear down. We lost everything. We rebuilt it from the foundation up on nights and weekends. We've done it all, and it's been really rewarding in so many ways. But during that time, we have also experienced multiple thefts, finding random people on our property damage, eerie feelings of never knowing if you're alone, always checking your camera feed to see what's happening outside your doors, whether you're on the property or away. In our haste of what was seemingly the simplest project of the last 8 years, we assumed we could go off of what our neighbors across the street did for their fence placement and height. We proceeded with countless hours into building a beautiful structural steel welded fence that once finished will be aesthetically pleasing for our style of house. The fence provides coherence to our property. It will deter people from continuing to wander onto this part of our property because of a separate driveway. And because we all know what assuming does, I'm standing in front of you asking for a variance for this portion of our fence. It would not only protect our property, but it would also safeguard our fundamental right to quiet enjoyment. After all these years of nonstop work, we are tired. We were tired before we even started building the house. Mold toxicity poisoning will do that to you. So does feeling like you always have to be on high alert, even on your own property. It wears at you mentally, it affects your sleep, so it eventually wears on you physically. It can be traumatic in some instances. And our doctor is saying that it's time to undergo more advanced treatments for the toxic mold and associated chronic illness that we continue to face from our exposure. That we need rest and we need to focus on our healing. And it's impossible to rest when you feel like you always have to keep one eye open. It's exhausting. And it's impossible to heal without proper rest. And so we're asking for the variance to finish this fence ASAP so we can experience our right to quiet enjoyment for the first time on this property in 13 years without further delay. Let us peacefully enjoy what we've worked so hard to build. This fence would contribute to a sense of security, fostering a space where we can truly unwind and find solace after a long day as productive citizens in this community. Once the fence is complete, we can finish the landscaping. We want to fit in with the community and neighborhood and proudly show what we have built and accomplished with our hard work. Our neighbors have supported us over the years and want that for us as well. And it's surreal to be at this stage in the process for such a small issue, but no one was willing to have a reasonable conversation about this until now. We know how valuable your time is. We really appreciate your time and consideration of approving this variance.
Thank you. Do we have anyone? I don't think we have anyone from the West Bench Neighborhood Association present. Okay, we'll just go ahead and open this up for questions by the commission.
Mr. Chair.
John.
Just to clarify, so the setback confusion was because the neighbors across the streets, question for staff, Sabrina, the neighbor across the street is a side yard setback and the applicant assumed that side yard setback could apply to their front yard setback. Is that what it boils down to?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney, that's correct.
Thank you.
Sabrina, this is and they have it's a 6-foot fence, 6 foot high.
That's correct.
This is the insult. Okay. Question for you guys, the applicant. Do you know where the property line is?
Mr. Commissioner.
Yeah.
The property line is off the sidewalk, maybe a foot. Within a foot, probably.
From the back of the sidewalk?
Yes, from
Okay.
our side of the sidewalk.
From your side, okay, it's off, okay, about a foot, okay.
And then the fence is about 10 feet off the sidewalk.
From there, okay, so
Give or
you're like
take.
9 feet from the property
So
line.
I'm pretty close to the center of the setback.
Gotcha, okay. Okay, thank you.
For the,
Yeah,
for the record, could you read your name and address?
oh, sorry.
Sorry. Luke Grandine, owner, 2923 North Ash Park Lane.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we good on questions, gang? Nope, okay. You're good. Sorry, I thought you said you were working on a question. You're good. Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and open up this item for any public testimony. No, okay, please come on up. Yep. Name and address, please. You have 3 minutes.
I'm Roy Kay. I live at 2907 North Ash Park Lane. The Grandees and I are neighbors. I'm border the fence that's in question. I'm pretty surprised that staff denied the building of this. And if they had taken a picture, if you put them pictures back up, you'll see that they only took pictures of half the property, but they got a dandy picture of my house. The lower picture down in the low right-hand corner, my right, I don't know, it might be your left. That yellow house on the end, that's mine. On the other side of that cherry tree is the Grandees' house that they had to, the location, they tore down the old house and they built the new house. When that fence is finished, it would tie in perfectly with what's on the side that you can't see, unfortunately. Now, there may be an issue about the height. The city may have a problem with that. And the location for the setback. I drive my trailers in and out the side of that house between the fence and the house. I have no issues when I get to the sidewalk. I can see clear up to Delsa's Ice Cream on Ustick. I can look south until I see Swift Lane down there. Unfortunately, I'd see Northview, but it dives down. I recommend that you guys approve this fence. It is a structural fence that won't blow down in the strong winds. It's a 40 schedule pipe for the posts. They're set in concrete that has, I believe it's a 1 foot hole diameter, 4 feet deep. You couldn't pull that thing out if you tried. Not without a crane, maybe more. So, and I highly recommend that you approve it. I think it's a good project. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And I hope you have more questions for him.
Thank you. Okay. Make sure I don't have anybody online. Good there. Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Yeah, you guys have a few minutes for rebuttal if you want to come back up. Yeah, go for it.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. As owner and builder of this project, I've invested considerable time and money, blood, sweat, and tears. I'm sure you know how that goes. I've also spent time working for ACHD, so I firsthand know traffic and pedestrian flow. I've worked on sidewalks, streets, signals, intersections, building roads. So I did assume by looking at what my neighbors had that I could do something similar, and I neglected to properly plan this out. I did build it to last. It is all steel welded in place, concrete foundations. And I did just use common sense. I set it back to the center of the setback so that using our driveway personally, and also Roy and anybody else on the street or pedestrians, it would be safe. I don't think there's any issues with safety. It's strong. It'll match our home when it's finished. And I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll bring this item back before the commission to render a decision. Again, this is CVA 23-2.
Mr. Chairman,
Milt, please.
recommend we deny CVA 23-2 for the reasons stated in the staff report.
Second.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Milt.
I don't have anything to add to the staff report. It's regrettable. It's always sad. And unfortunately, the code is pretty clear on this, and there's no hardship and there's no exceptional circumstance that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you, Milt. Meredith, anything else?
Mr. Chair, yeah, I have the same note. We heard that it was misinformation or assumptions, things like that, but unfortunately no exceptional circumstance or hardship.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Chris.
I will attempt to be part of a solution for you guys. I know. I like the fabrication work. You're obviously very good at it. It is a good looking fence. It just needs to be scaled down to code. Something that can be done for free the Boise Police Department is happy to have, we have specialists on staff that will come out and help you harden the target. They'll show you what you can do to help make your property look more cohesive and feel safer. So that is something the BPD will do. And that might be, aside from hiring a landscape architect who could help, design something that would be cohesive and workable. That obviously costs money, but BPD would happily come out to your house and help you with any additional security concerns that you have. So I would just throw that out there.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, go ahead and, yeah, it's regrettable. Sorry, it's regrettable. Yeah, I appreciate Chris's comments. Thank you, Chris, for that suggestion. So all the best moving forward with another solution, and reducing the height or shifting it back a little bit, I guess is about the two best options at this point. So we'll go ahead and call the roll again. CVA 23-2, motion to deny by Commissioner Gillespie with a second by Commissioner Stead.
Stead.
Aye.
Schaefer.
Aye.
Blanchard.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Gillespie.
Aye.
Finbrook.
Aye.
Mooney.
Aye.
All in favor. Motion carries.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, are we good to press on to our last item, team? Okay, we'll go ahead. Item number 7, PUD 22-67, KC Gardner Company LC, 3300 South Vista Avenue. This is a general exception to apply the C2D zoning district standards to the entire subject property in order to develop a mixed-use project, including a multifamily hotel and religious institution. Height exception is included in the conditional use permit for a planned unit development comprised of 183 multifamily units on 9.12 acres in a C2D and R1C zones. That is a mouthful. And we're going to hear from Sabrina again first. Yeah. Okay.
All right, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the item before you is a request for a general exception to apply the C2D zoning district standards to the entire subject property in order to develop a mixed-use project, including multifamily, a hotel, and a religious institution. a height exception and a conditional use permit for a planned unit development comprised of 183 multifamily units on 9.12 acres located at 3300 South Vista Avenue are also included. The subject property is located at the northeastern corner of the I-84 Vista Avenue interchange, and the surrounding area is comprised of a mix of uses, including single-family homes, hotels, offices, a restaurant, and a convenience store. The subject property is split zoned with approximately 5 acres of the 9-acre site zoned C2D and the remaining 4 acres zoned R1C. The requested general exception will allow the standards of the C2D zone to be applied to the entirety of the site. The applicant proposes to construct a hotel and religious institution in the northwestern portion of the site near Vista Avenue. 3 multifamily buildings containing a total of 183 dwelling units are proposed in the southeastern portion of the site. A comprehensive pedestrian network is proposed throughout the site, and a recommended condition of approval requires the applicant to construct curb, gutter, and detached sidewalks with landscape buffers containing street trees along all of the site's frontages, with the exception of its frontage on I-84. Per the requirements of ACHD and VRT, the applicant will be required to remove vehicular access to the site from Vista Avenue and provide a bus stop near the northwestern corner of the site. 20% of the residential units within the project will be income restricted for a term of 30 years to households earning less than 100% of the area median income. This provision of affordable units qualifies the residential structures within the development to utilize a maximum height of 55 feet through the incentives of the housing bonus ordinance. Additionally, the applicant requests a height exception to allow the hotel and religious institution to be built with a maximum height of 65 feet. The height exception is anticipated to have minimal impact on the adjacent properties due to the separation between the proposed structures and the adjacent single-family homes. Public comments were received from 2 neighbors of the site. One expressed opposition to the proposal due to its potential to increase traffic and negatively affect pedestrian and bicycle safety in the area. The other requested that the commission require the applicant to perform pest control before beginning excavation on site. As outlined in your packets, the planning team finds that the application complies with the required findings and recommends approval, and I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Sabrina. Next, we're from the applicant. Gentlemen, thank you for your patience tonight.
Now, once again, thank you. Jeff Wardle here on behalf of the applicant. My address.
It's been a long night, right?
Behind Whole Foods and in front of Winco on the 3rd floor. Anyway, sorry, it has been a long day. If staff can go ahead and pull up my presentation, we're going to try to get through this relatively straightforward, because all the conversations that you have heard tonight about other concerns and other applications, I think we heard those from your staff a year ago and made those changes. And this too is an application, which by the passage of time and with the efforts that you put in with the new code, a lot of the requests are mooted by what has been approved. So we're here on behalf of Boise Management, Inc., who own the 9 acres that is, I still refer to it as the Holiday Inn property because that's what we all knew it as. And in fact, it is a 1965 era Holiday Inn. We've requested a plan unit development application with a general exception due to the mixed zoning. Again, the mixed zoning is eliminated under the new code. And we think that this is the type of appropriate neighborhood mixed use that leverages the existing economic base that is there. And you have an owner that is committed to true affordable, taking advantage of those changes that you made. So as noted, we are requesting 3 height exceptions. The housing height exception comes through compliance with the affordable housing provision. The other 2 are the religious institution and going from a 2-story hotel to a 5-story hotel. But as you've also talked and heard about tonight, as you know, there is an elevation difference between if you come off Vista, anywhere from 6 to 15 feet. So again, taking those things into consideration and staff's direction, we've taken a variety of actions. Now, uniquely, there is the 2 acres on the eastern edge that has never been developed. And All three structures date from the mid 1960s. You have 2 acres of undeveloped property that takes access back there on Wright and Apple Blossom. We are proposing the demolition of those buildings. They have reached the end of their functional lives. They are stucco buildings with flat roofs, and the time and economics have caught up with that. The property owners have, never had a client come to us go, we want to build affordable housing. We want to build a 5-story hotel and a religious institution on one site. And I go, I don't know how much more mix with below ground parking and not asking for a parking reduction. So to a certain extent, it's kind of a unicorn application. It's the reuse of a parcel that has lived its good life. It's consistent with what the use is there. And we recognize that there needs to be sensitivity to the single family residential development to the east. And so that's why we make those transitions. So to quickly move through it, 183 apartments in 3 buildings, 240 room hotel with approximately 12,000 square feet of meeting and restaurant space, and then a 12,000 square foot Hindu temple, which sits up there on Elder Street. With respect to this, we will comply with all of the requirements of the Boise City Code for housing affordability. We have a variety of housing and use types, with a few 3-bedroom units, as well as a mix of 1 and 2-bedroom units. And on the eastern edge, those are 2-story stacked flats that have all of the living space oriented towards the hotel to the west, with essentially windows for bathrooms and garages windows for bathrooms and kitchens oriented to the residents to the east, which are a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom. Additionally, there is 15 plus feet of space plus landscaping, which is above and beyond the requirements. Along the northern property boundary, again, we have proposed a 5-story development, but we have placed amenities between it and the single family residences to the north, including a tot lot, including a courtyard, pickleball, enhanced pedestrian walkways, and an indoor pool and other amenity features. So, I think we've gone above and beyond what's required under the PUDs. With respect to the hotel, this will combine the 3 existing hotel buildings into a single building that is 5 stories. And as you can see there in this corner right here is the corner that is towards the intersection and the interchange. And so as you think about it, you're coming off a slope here, and we have tried to put the back of house and do all of those things there. Now, Hindu temple, very straightforward. It is a 2-story structure in a traditional Hindu design. So we are in agreement with all of the conditions recommended in the staff report. There are 2 items that we acknowledge are going to require further refinement as we get to design review, because this will require design review. And the first is Public Works and Fire expressed concern about these facilities right here in this design. Taking the recommendations of staff well over a year ago, we eliminated a circular drive that went around the perimeter and moved that building to the street. Now, the result of that is because of drive length, we're going to have to modify this because there's just not enough room there to put in a turnaround for fire and for Public Works and to address their garbage. And then the fire department, as you know, raised some issues with respect to access to this point. And there are some solutions that we've already talked to them about. We recognize this is going to require modification. And that's why I'm not having a fight with ACHD tonight, because we think as we work through the issues with fire, we're going to have to come back and address how that access right there works anyway. So we, discretion being the better part of valor, recognize that's an issue for another day. The other issue that comes up again, as we deal with ACHD, and this is the only thing we need guidance from you on, is when we designed this and we had our traffic study done, it contemplated an access up here onto Elder, retaining an access onto Vista, but that becoming right in, right out. And as a recognition of the concerns of the neighbors, this access onto Wright, which then comes out to Apple Blossom and up to Elder, we agreed would be restricted to just an emergency fire access with bollards. ACHD, and that was the direction we also had received at the time from staff as we got the staff reports and worked through that. You know, that's just going to take some design issues and conversations with fire. So we want some guidance from you, because it's helpful when the Planning and Zoning Commission tells us exactly what they want to see. We recognize the benefit back there on Wright and Apple Blossom to the neighbors to improve the pedestrian connectivity by putting in the curb, gutter, and sidewalk that doesn't exist. You don't necessarily need vehicular access back there other than for fire, because most of those trips can go back out to Elder and to the light, because that's where they're going to go anyway. But those are the issues that we have to work through. So we have our design team here. Obviously, you guys know my beef that conditional use permits have become the only thing we don't bring to you is material boards. And of course, our design team is here with their materials tonight to talk about those if we need to. But we think that this is an application that, since we initiated it and worked through issues with staff and through the efforts that you did on the zoning code rewrite, we have come up with a plan that is not only consistent with the current code, but is consistent with the vision that you all have in moving forward. And with that, if we have any design questions, I do have our design team who can walk you through, but we just don't want to take any more of your time. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Wardle. We're gonna, you guys are the only ones left, but we'll check in, make sure no one from the neighborhood associations here. And I don't think they are, so we'll go ahead and just open this up for questions.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So one of the rezone or the zoning questions was the parcel splits. I thought it was 4 acres and 5 acres on either side. Is that, am I recalling that correctly, Sabrina?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney, that's correct. Approximately 5 acres are C2D and approximately 4 are R1C.
Okay, so for Mr. Wardle, so you mentioned 2, is that just, you mentioned 2 acres on the east, but it's
No,
actually-
sorry, that's the 4 acres that is zoned R1C, but 2 of those 4
are
acres
undeveloped.
are wholly
All
undeveloped.
right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair,
Chris, yeah?
what's the relationship of the Hindu temple to the whole development?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Blanchard, the property owners, being Hindu, desire to have a cultural center celebrating their faith.
Well, I'm just excited to see that some religious institution is stepping up to the plate and delivering affordable housing. Like, I'd like to see more of that. And we get leadership from the Hindu community. So that's awesome.
And as you know, affordable housing, as we know, I mean, the key is making the land value is your big expense. And so I appreciate these clients coming forward with it, because it's a unique piece of property that allows us to integrate that with the commercial use.
Mr. Chairman.
Milt, please.
This is a question for both the city and the applicant. So I'm thinking about the access point issue and the applicant's request that we opine upon those questions. As I understand the staff report, it's contemplating kind of the end state being that northern access point onto Sunrise Rim Road, right? That's number one. And then I'm unclear, is it the city's view that the final end state is that Vista Avenue access point will be closed because that's what ACHD wants, or is it because it's what the city wants?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, ACHD is the entity that reviews traffic
and they-
impact studies and make those recommendations. We do typically defer to
Right,
them
right,
on
right.
that. Yeah,
And so they want that one closed.
correct.
Okay, and then what is I'm confused. I'm trying to read the ACHD report. What is their final decision with respect to that access point onto Wright Street, that one in the far eastern corner?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, the recommendation is that's a full access.
It's a full access. Mr. Chairman?
Yep. No.
Mr. Wardle, is it, do you have a problem with it being full access, or do you not want it to be full access? You wanted it to be bollarded, or what are you asking us to opine upon?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Gillespie, our traffic study contemplated restricting the vista to a right in, right out with the access onto Elder. And then I think there was a miscommunication at some point because the staff had directed us that the easternmost access should be restricted. There was a note in one of the follow-up reports from either ACHD or planning staff that it hadn't been designated that way on the plans. And I went back and looked at it. And yeah, it isn't designated that way, but that's what we were directed to do. So Commissioner Gillespie, I
just want to know.
Knowing that we had committed in neighborhood meetings that would be restricted, it would be our preference that be restricted. And it is our preference that Vista be limited to right in, right out, because we don't think a full access there is appropriate, but we also don't think sending 4,000 trips a day onto Elder Street is appropriate and necessary either. So what I would request is just that you give us guidance to come back to design review with revised access once we've resolved the issue with the fire department.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
So, Sabrina, what's your preference for that Wright Street? Does the city's view, they want full access or just emergency vehicles?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, I think it would depend on where we land with ACHD on the access onto Vista. If that's closed, I don't think we want Elder to be the only access point that cars are coming in and out from.
Mr. Chairman, one more question for the city. So is the current Holiday Inn access point the one that's on Vista now? Is that correct? Can't you turn in? Where are the current access points?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, there is an existing access point on Vista. I believe there's also one from Elder Street.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Gillespie, yes, the one on Elder would be relocated farther to the east. And the Vista one is that we've proposed is approximately in the location that exists today. You're thinking if there's an access behind Jackson's into that building that is parallel to Elder.
Maybe.
I
don't know. I don't drive by there. Okay, I got it. All right. I understand at least what it is you'd like.
And
our
Mr.
advice
Chairman,
on.
Commissioner Gillespie, our fine architect, pointed out that part of the reason we just need some guidance is that if you eliminate Vista and we're forced to do everything, then we're adding 183 new residences onto Elder, which only has that point of access. So that's why we think this is a conversation for us, the fire department, ACHD, and staff as we get to design review.
Mr. Chair.
John.
I've got a question about the south frontage to the I-84 ramp. So the way I understand it is Apple Blossom extended south is about the end of the I-84 noise barrier. Can for the city, for the staff, what's the background on that noise barrier? How did it get there? Who paid for it? Is there any consideration for this project?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney, I believe that was constructed concurrently with the development of the residential subdivisions in that area. I'm honestly not sure whether that was constructed by the developer or whether that was an improvement installed by ITD. We did transmit this to ITD. They didn't recommend any improvements by the applicant in that location, but if there are concerns about sound impacts and those types of things, the commission can add additional conditions to address those.
Mr. Chair.
Mhm.
So for the applicant, what are your thoughts on that?
Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Commissioner Mooney, I actually have history with all of that, representing multiple property owners there. When we did when we did that intersection with Garvey Bonds, and the current walls that extend both to the east and to the west, that is that finished textured concrete was constructed at that time. And if you recall, the Vista interchange was reconfigured and lengthened. It was widened, but they brought it in, it's a modified SPUI. So it's a little bit tighter and a little bit higher. So those improvements were done contemplating the uses that were there to screen the residences farther to the east as well as the hotel. And in fact, there was litigation with the prior owner and the Idaho Transportation Department over whether or not that wall was too tall. Ending up at the Idaho Supreme Court, finding that it was not too tall and didn't eliminate the use. So we're comfortable with it. We recognize the location, we recognize the noise issues that exist, and our design team has taken that into consideration with how we've designed and positioned those buildings.
Mr. Chair, a follow-up then. So Mr. Warden, then that building B, so you're not necessarily concerned about the noise impact on building B there, the fact that the wall ends before that area?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Mooney, we are not.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman?
Nope.
So one last swing at the access point question. So isn't the city's general view that the more access points, the better, because we spread traffic out and, reduce bottlenecks? So as I read the city's report, it seems like you're supporting the idea of having 3 access points, including the Vista right in and right out. Is that fair to say?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, it is true that having additional access points does help disperse traffic and kind of ease flow of cars through areas. It is also true that we do prefer to limit access points onto arterial roads when possible, and Vista Avenue is a principal arterial.
So you want it both ways. Thank you so much. You're going to make a wonderful wife. So.
Well, Mr. Worrell, let's step into it a little bit then. So the building corner,
yes,
that you have the fire access issue that you punted on to some degree, right? You're still working through that. Have you had much discussion with fire about how to address that?
Can we pull that image back up?
Because that could play with the access point.
It could. And when we got the staff report, when we got the comments from fire, we immediately had the design team make a call just to understand what the issue, what the solution in their mind is. And so there are 2 issues. It's the 150-foot hose length that we're going to have to address there, as well as this turnaround. And we don't perceive that to be a problem. We can sort through that. So in discussing it with fire, one of the suggestions is if we made this be a plaza that supported the weight of trucks, an apparatus, you could do that. The other issue is that, yes, they can take access off of Vista, but because of the elevation change, that becomes problematic. And so that's why we don't have a definitive answer. I mean, our traffic study said, restrict this. Right now it's full. ACHD is not medianized Vista. At some point, I would anticipate that they would. We have no desire to make left-hand turns out of that. But that's why, as we talk to fire about what the solutions are to make sure we have that, it becomes either a circulation, basically build the hammerhead right here so we can get there, or address it through retaining walls and stairs that are heated, that are all year round. But that's why as we look at this, knowing that you got to make that change, that cascades a bunch of other stuff. And we just think that we can address, design review is the appropriate time to address it. Because worst case, if we had to, we're just barely beyond the 150 feet at that corner. So, there's some potential other structural things that you could do and way you can do it. But, we pushed it to that corner at the request of staff to not have the traditional fire road around it, and that's fine. And I think it works better with the site by pushing it there because you're right up against the slope. But yeah, that's an issue we have to work through, and we appreciate fire's timely response. They took the call and they said, yeah, we can work through that at design review. We don't see a problem, and our architects have already focused on 2 or 3 solutions. But we can't commit at this point that doesn't impact the access onto Vista.
Okay. And then, like you mentioned, back on the Apple Blossom Lane. So with at the neighborhood meeting, you had that access as fire only.
Correct.
So, this is a totally loaded question. I'm sure the neighborhood, had some concerns about that being full access.
Correct.
Rabid concerns.
They're all rabid concerns.
We'll let the representative that participated in the neighborhood meetings share insight on that topic.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Dave Beater, 8th and Main. I spent 16 years on that side. I haven't been on this side very much, so be kind to me. I was glad that you picked up on that, because one of the reasons there isn't anybody here tonight
there's no access
is because we along the process here agreed to make that emergency access only. I don't want to speak for them, obviously, but that and some of the other design changes we made, one being the 2-story closest to the neighborhood. But as it always is, traffic was a big issue. In talking with city staff, they were amenable to that. Fire, as far as the rest of the property, was very good with that. But we did make that commitment to the neighbors, and we hope to keep that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. We're quiet. Okay. Thanks, you guys. Anybody would like to testify at all? The podium is free. This is the opportunity. Uh-oh.
Mr. Chair.
Wait, yeah, John. Yeah.
I guess I do have a question. So we talked about the VRT. We didn't talk about the VRT stop out there in Vista. I guess question for the applicant, Mr. Wardle. Can you talk through that as well as the bike lane out there? That's there's a bike lane which is substandard, and they've got the question is, can you improve that frontage properly?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Mooney, we have no objections or concerns to VRT's request for modifying that and relocating it. Essentially, they're asking us to relocate it to the south of Jackson's. As for improving any further improvements to that frontage, that was all part of the rebuild of the Vista interchange. There was, a condemnation that took that frontage and further refined it and moved it. So we're not contemplating any additional frontage improvements due to the fact that that was the ultimate facility that was built.
Thank
Yeah. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Wardle. Okay, we're good on questions now. We can go to testimony. We're good. Okay. Right. All right. Let's do the testimony. Come on up, please.
Thank you all.
let's see my name and
Yeah,
address.
name and address, please. Yeah.
Okay, name and address. Okay, well, my name is Justin Gopp. I live on 2480 Sunrise Rim, so it's right, Apple Blossom right there. And I have Talia with me, apparently. I wasn't planning to talk, but since I'm here, no one else is. I just wanted to share that I am excited as I've seen the updates about this plan to go forward to redevelop the site. It definitely needs it. And I'm very excited to have a site with people living there versus the hotels that are there now. I think it's a great plan. I love the address of the Hindu temple being a built-in part of that. It's really cool to see. And I definitely, the only call out I'd say is I definitely share the concern about the access points there. I'm sure that's a thing for ACHE from what I'm hearing, but already the amount of traffic that feeds through, if most of that traffic is feeding through east of Apple Blossom through Sunrise Rim versus being able to get more directly to Vista, I would definitely feel concerned about that. I've had several kids almost get hit on that road. Several animals actually get hit on that road. Don't love it. So I definitely share the concern over access points. I hope you guys are able to work out a good solution for that. But otherwise, I'm excited to see it. I basically came because I wanted to hear the updates going on. That's all I have. Thank you, guys.
Great. Thank you. Okay. I think that about does it for our testimony. Mr. Wardle, you want to come up for a quick rebuttal?
Jeff Wardle, 251 East Front, Suite 310. We have no rebuttal. We're in agreement with the comments you just heard from our neighbor. I'm excited about the project. You know, when I first moved back to Boise, my office was there in the iCrimp building, and I sat there and looked at the Holiday Inn day after day after day. So we appreciate having a client who is committed to doing something unique and interesting. And it's a great project that we've been able to work on with them. And it's one of those where, again, you know, we started work on this well over a year ago. Time has kind of caught up with us in the direction that you've headed. We think it's wholly consistent with the future plan as well, and request your direction on access and approval tonight. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and bring this back before the commission to render a decision. And again, everybody, this is PUD 22-67.
Mr. Chairman,
I would, Milt,
point of privilege.
please.
Since our august Commissioner Stead has been kicked upstairs and is now leaving the small-time Two Snickers meeting, going to the big stage, I think we ought to allow Commissioner Stead to make her send-off motion however she would please.
It's a lovely sentiment, and I second the thought.
This is not the gift bag we used to get.
I have some Snickers.
But let's see, I move that we approve CVA 2023-002. Wrong item, 7, sorry. PUD 22-67, number 7.
Second,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Please, Milt. Mhm.
I wondered if right away we should add I would basically, we can either condition it or just put it in the record. But personally, I'd like to condition that the Vista access stay right in, right out and stay open, and that the right access be bollarded for emergency vehicles only. I think if we move away from that, and they're linked, right? If we move away from that and open that right street access, that we kind of need to do a whole new hearing because that neighborhood is going to see, you know, I don't think it's going to be a ton of traffic, but some. And so I sort of feel like we need to take a stand on the Vista access so that we don't run into a problem with that right access. Plus, I think, look, the Vista's access is already there. So I wondered if we should add a condition that addresses those two access points.
Yeah, I support that.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, I would add
Asked to amend.
Yes.
yeah,
I
to
agree
say,
to amend.
you know, yeah.
Okay. Done.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, please.
I really appreciate the proactive working with the neighborhood. That always saves us a lot of headache up here. I also appreciate the collaboration with the commission and looking for guidance. That's rare. I think this is a really great mixed use project, and looking forward to seeing it come around.
Excellent.
Mr. Chairman.
Please don't.
Yeah, I generally would want all access all the time, all three, but I think Mayor Beater's point about like the neighborhood and you know, sort of almost the procedural aspect is a pretty important point. And I just point out in the record that the access point on Vista is already there. And I don't see that it makes Vista run a whole heck of a lot better just to close it if we make it right in, right out. And so that's what I think.
Excellent. Any other thoughts?
Mr. Chair.
Jennifer?
All right, I'll be in support of the motion with the amendment. I think especially, you know, our traffic impact study says, recommends right in, right out on Vista. I think there's some conflict between what ACHD is saying, what the traffic impact study is recommending. So I feel comfortable keeping that Vista as right in, right out because of the traffic impact study. So.
Great. Janelle?
I'll be in support of the motion as well. And I just want to say thank you for the mixed use. Because I really like it.
It's a miracle.
I appreciate it. That's
Let's
it.
see if it works.
Yeah.
Right.
It'll work. It'll work.
In 5 years, we want to change the hotel to a new apartment.
When they want to bring back the Holodome.
The holiday.
Right. Dating myself as well.
Mr. Chair.
Chris.
Just real quick. Yeah, I really appreciate this application. I think it's so great that we finally have a religious institution stepping up and delivering some affordable housing. That's just super cool. And I hope it'll be a model for others in the city too. Mr. Gopp, thank you so much for hanging out. It's a late hour and that was great that you showed up and had a little civics lesson for your kids too. That's awesome. And I have every confidence in the world that Mr. Wardle and Mr. Reader will meet with our planning and fire staff and ECHD and get this all squared away for design review. So I have no concern with that. So appreciate the great application.
Okay, very good. We got a motion to approve by future Councilwoman Stead and a second by Commissioner Gillespie.
Not future.
Not future Councilwoman, no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Good.
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Aye.
Finbrock,
Aye.
Mooney,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Goodbye, Meredith.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Yep. Meredith. All the best, Meredith. All the best. We're adjourned.